Good morning, 6 o'clock from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I'm Robert Walsh. Sunday Night Football, you got to see Dallas smother the Eagles 33-13. Dak Prescott was deadly, finishing with 271 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. The Cowboys are now in a 3-way tie record-wise for the lead in the NFC, but the 49ers hold the tiebreaker over both the Eagles and the Cowboys and hold on to the number 1 spot. Bills got a little bit of revenge over the Chiefs, 20-17 last night. After the game, Patrick Mahomes had a few choice words about the officiating after a potential game-winning Kadarius Toney touchdown was called back due to being offsides. The Chiefs' loss drops them to the 3rd spot in the AFC and potentially must play the first road playoff game of Patrick Mahomes' career. And Titans tonight taking on the Dolphins in Miami. Lee Company countdown to kickoff starts with 3HL at 4, and it will take you all the way up to 5 o'clock when Titans Radio will take you all the way to the 7:15 kickoff. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and the Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Welcome to your Monday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. It's a beautiful day for some RKW and for some Titans football. We are brewed by 8th and Roasts, and there is lots to get to over the weekend. A difficult weekend for many in Middle Tennessee, a difficult weekend for the 104.5 The Zone, Tennessee Titans and Titans Radio family, as this morning we remember the late Titans legend and 104.5 The Zone icon, Frank Wycheck, on this morning's show. 615-737-1045 is our number. Whole crew here. Ramon Foster in Miami, or Miami Gardens, Fort Lauderdale, whatever we're calling it down there. Kayla Anderson, Robert Walsh, Reed Smith, making the show happen. My name is Will Bowling. Whew, what a weekend. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Man, good morning, good people. How are y'all? Am I clear?
Yeah.
We got you.
You're clear.
I'll take
It's almost
man.
better than when you're actually here.
You know, I feel like that's you're saying that because of my presence being there, Bert. I don't feel like it's because of the sound.
No, the sound is killer. You sound
it's really
very clear.
Yeah, it sounds like you're sitting right next to us.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? Absolutely. I'll tell you what's also very smart of Coach Vrabel. They didn't get here yesterday. We didn't get here yesterday until like nightfall. So if you got a Monday night game with a long layover essentially, and you got a bunch of players that also frequent Miami, you know what you do? You strategically fly into Miami late, okay, which is a real good team thing to do. So there's no room or time for you to have degenerate friends come and pick you up and stuff like that, man. So very smart. Most coaches do that, though. I've learned that over the years is when you go into a buzzing city, yeah, fly in super late.
Yeah, I feel like that's probably the biggest city where you want to plan accordingly.
Yeah, and we are out the way, too. So
Yep.
it's even better.
It's a good thing.
Even better.
That is a very good thing. Before we get to the news of the weekend, the very sad headline for us at The Zone and at Titans Radio, lots of people affected by tornadoes once again in Middle Tennessee over the weekend. Ramon, you are not far away from some of those tornadoes and tornadic activity up in Hendersonville. First, tell the people your perspective and just that everything's good with you.
Man, with everything that happened yesterday with Frank, definitely kind of eclipsed a little bit of Saturday night, man. First and foremost, I'm thankful to God that we still had this Monday night game and it didn't get flexed out, because we may have been a mile or 2 miles max, if I'm not mistaken, away from where the tornado had a lot of damage on Main Street in Hendersonville. It hit a spot that we know, Jolly Ollie's. It hit Big Play Arcade. I heard there were people inside of it. It was as real. No, it was more than real on Saturday night for me and my family, man. I appreciate everybody that reached out to us. We lost power for a while, but that was probably our biggest issue right there. I know a lot of people lost homes. Some lives were lost. I talk all the time about Humble Hendersonville and Simple Sumner. Well, that group in Gallatin also is going to need some help, but not just them. Springfield, Clarksville, just all across, man, is going to need some rehab. I will, if afforded to, will be helping out as much as I possibly can. It was scary. I won't even front to you guys. It was a very scary event. I remember watching the news and following the app on my phone and everything. And when I got the update and saw that it was at mile marker 95 going across 65 and headed towards Vietnam vets, that's when me and my family all ran underneath the house. And when I tell you that is about as real as it's ever been for me with the tornado situation. I think in 2020 we had the straight line winds. You guys remember that? And this didn't compare to that. Like, this was hey, there's no time to play around. And I had my wife and kids there. Mother-in-law was over the house. Brother-in-law was over the house. So it was a group of us. And Ron's son was staying with us on the weekend also. So it was a lot of responsibility that went into it. And everybody, I will say, listened. And everybody had a plan. And I empathized with the people that lost a lot. I hadn't rolled down Main Street yet because here's the thing. There's a lot of stuff that's down and a lot of workers that need their space, and I didn't want to crowd that space as they were working this weekend. And a lot of people just want to get videos of it and post it. But I also believe that those people who are actually on the front line of it right now, as far as NES and Cumberland Electric, we should let them work and get electricity up so that people who are out without right now can at least get some light, some water, and some cover in some sense. So definitely we got some rehab to do in Hendersonville and just surrounding areas right now. I think they said it was a Category 2, a EF 2 or 3 that hit, about 4 football fields wide. Significant, y'all. Definitely very significant in Hendersonville.
Yeah, crazy. And so glad you guys are all right. So glad that you guys made it through all of that. And it is certainly something that is surreal to live through when you have something that close to you and the sirens are going off and it's so dark and ominous around. Feels like you're in a movie, in a nightmare. And I know certainly felt that way for so many Middle Tennesseans. We talk about it a lot, guys. Middle Tennessee's been through a lot. Middle Tennessee rallies around its own, rallies together through situations like this, and you hate to have to do that. But, man, one of just the many things that was so difficult over the weekend. And here on our 104.5 The Zone family in Titans Radio and Tennessee Titans lost Frank Wycheck yesterday, 52 years old, a Titans legend who spent 11 years in the NFL with the team, passed away in Chattanooga where he lived over the weekend. And this one is tough. This one is really tough, and we're going to have a show dedicated to Frank, towards his memory, towards his legacy as not only a Tennessee Titan, but an iconic voice in broadcasting in the city of Nashville in a time where sports and professional sports were just starting to catch on, and we're starting to build the kind of loyalty and the kind of fandom that we all know now for the Tennessee Titans that you guys showcase every time you interact with us every day. Frank Wycheck was as instrumental towards that as anyone who's ever worn a Tennessee Titans uniform, not only for what he did in 11 years on the field, but for what he did off the field as well as a broadcaster and as you heard on Titans Radio. Guys, this is a pillar of the Nashville sports community and certainly someone that we're going to remember fondly today.
Yeah, I remember when I moved here, and obviously, I didn't get to meet him in person at least, but when I joined News 2 and Corey Curtis, who's been here for a long time doing sports broadcasting, I can tell you the names that I heard first and foremost when I moved here that I knew I had to do as much research as I could about was obviously Eddie George, was Frank Wycheck, and obviously the late, great quarterback that we all know. But I remember hearing Frank's name whenever we did anything in terms of like history, or when Delaney Walker would bring up like a tight end great that he looked up to, even if it was somebody who was much older than him and he never played with. That was the name that was always brought up. So I can tell how much he was beloved in this area in the NFL with the Titans family, just from hearing it from other people. I didn't even have to be here to know that. So that just says something about who he was and how many lives he impacted.
Yeah, definitely he's one of those cornerstone guys in Titans history. I remember watching him, and because I'm from Tennessee, watching the Titans play. His name reigns supreme here. My brother for sure played tight end, and with the stuff, with how he played the game, and we had somebody familiar because we had a Tennessee Titans team here, an NFL team here, and the same for myself. If you played offense and you were a tight end here in Tennessee, those were the people that you thought of was Frank Wycheck, and hearing his name, not knowing how to say his name first and foremost, and then understand like it's just Wycheck. And everybody that I've ever met bring his name up when you mention the Tennessee Titans. I never had the pleasure of meeting him, but I've heard so much about him because of he did the same job that I'm doing right now as a player, doing the morning show here, and just all the stories that's behind that too, man, and how that group caught lightning in the bottle with the group that they had and how important it was. Honestly, y'all, and talking to Brad Willis yesterday, how that group helped lay down what we're doing right now. And it's just it's cool being in their footsteps for the pathway that they kind of paved out for us. And it's definitely a deep loss here. The Titans radio crew we'll probably have something later tonight as we broadcast. That group was very intimate with them. He was also on the team playing with them with Titans Radio for years. And just sad. It's a tragic event for sure, man. It definitely put a black cloud over the organization, city, and just fans of the Titans yesterday.
Well, this morning we're going to bring in some very special guests who can speak to Frank's legacy not only as a player but as a broadcaster, including David Boclair, longtime Titans journalist who you've heard on this show quite a bit, who covered Frank's career from day one as a member of the media here in Nashville. He had a great post about Frank yesterday that I'm really excited to share with the audience, and just some of the stories about him and what made him such a special player. At 8 o'clock, we'll be joined by Kevin Ingram, the man who hosted a show for quite a while with Frank Wycheck and moderated some great arguments and great conversations between himself, Mark Howard, and Frank Wycheck. He's going to join us at 8 o'clock this morning. And Brad Hopkins, Titans legend, former Titans offensive lineman, who will stop by in hour 3 at 8:20 as well, a man who shared an offense with the guy in Frank Wycheck, who also made that transition, just like Brad, to broadcasting after his career. So we'll start with those three. We will get to your calls as well on your favorite Frank Wycheck memories. We will talk a little bit of Titans this morning. Obviously, there is a game tonight down in Miami. But first and foremost, here in hour one, we're going to talk more about the man who became a legend and an original Mount Rushmore figure for the Tennessee Titans, remembering the late Frank Wycheck. That's next as we continue here in hour one on RKW.
At Genesis Diamonds, they are rolling back prices and finance rates so you can get that headliner gift for your friend, significant other this Christmas, okay? Maybe it's a pair of diamond earrings or that all-new designer fashion bracelet or that dazzling 2-carat diamond ring. It's all more affordable because at Genesis, they've got special pricing across the board and zero-interest financing for 5 years. So you can get that $3,000 diamond pendant and pay just $50 a month, or that $6,000 eternity band for just $100 a month. Everything's included in this amazing holiday offer also. All GI certified natural diamonds and all lab-grown diamonds are included. They will even have their luxury pre-owned Rolex watches on display also. So imagine that $15,000 Rolex for just $250 a month. You can even finance the sales tax. Don't let the talks of rising prices and high interest rates dampen your holiday spirit. At Genesis, they are lowering prices and taking interest rates down to zero. So get that amazing gift they deserve and make your money go farther than ever. Merry Christmas from Genesis Diamonds. They're located in Green Hills and Cool Springs on approved credit.
RKW is brewed by 8th and Roast right here on 104.5 The Zone, 615-737-1045. Streaming live on 104.5 The Zone TV, Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitter, or Twitch as well on the 104.5 The Zone app. As we ask for your favorite Frank Wycheck memory here this morning on the show, remembering the late Titans legend who passed over the weekend. One of 18 NFL tight ends, guys, with at least 500 career receptions. The franchise's third all-time leading receiver and only one of two players to lead the Titans or Oilers in receptions at least 5 years in a row. When you talk about on-the-field success, guys, early on in the history of the Tennessee Titans, you have that conversation about the best players and where the Mount Rushmore would start. I know it's cliche, but for this conversation, it's relevant. Steve McNair, Eddie George, Frank Wycheck. That's the three you got to begin with.
No doubt. Well, that's light work right there, man. It's no surprise you see Frank's name up in Nissan Stadium. You see his picture up. Heck, we were just there for the toy drive, right? And I walked through I like to see the stadium when it's empty and we have that access being inside of it doing the toy drive. And I turn around and it's him, it's Frank, it's Eddie, and it's Steve up on the wall. And I'm just like, I think Dr. Dyson was on there too. And I'm just thinking to myself, that's amazing to be that important to a franchise that they put your big old mural up inside the stadium, man. But it's not just that, it's impact. It was, a team looking for establishment here in Nashville, in Memphis. It's initially just to bring a pro team to Tennessee and to see him be who he was, wearing 89. My brother wore 89, and I know some of that was because of that influence and just being in part of his history. Watching it, I thought was unique, and what he means to the station is a lot. What he means to the state is huge, but also just the way he played the game. It was hard. It was athletic. He made some catches, some plays for you that you were just like, yeah, it's cool to be a tight end. If you didn't want to play offensive line, tight end was the bridge to get you over there, and he made that relatable. He made that cool for guys like myself who, I'll be honest with you, I fought playing offensive line for the majority of my youthful days, and tight end was one of those positions that's a bridge to it, man. So my sympathy to his family, Titans fans who love him to death, man. And hopefully his legacy lives in a very, very bright light.
Yeah, I loved reading, like I said, when I got here about him and just, some of the things he did in terms of putting this franchise in history. And, graduated, obviously was drafted out of the University of Maryland and spent those 2 seasons with Washington. But I feel like, he was able to be Frank Wycheck with the Oilers and Tennessee Titans. Like that fit his brand of football, like a tough-nosed blue-collar guy who obviously was a guy who could block, but maybe a little underrated as a pass catcher. And it's always when you see other people from around the league, not just that played with him or in that era, but you see guys that are younger that are playing now that actually know who he was and know what he did. And knew his legacy, and they're tweeting out their condolences. I think that just says that his brand of football has kind of just reached so many levels of people, right? And players. So it just goes to show again how much of an impact he made. And I wish, honestly, I could have listened to him at the time on 104.5 The Zone in the mornings, because I heard that he was just very opinionated and he had some opinions that would go back and forth, but it was so great for morning radio because it was like Frank was going to say his opinions.
Yep. Certainly did. And that was the fondest memories I have of him are as Wake Up Zone and Titans radio broadcaster Frank Wycheck. And I think there is a privilege that certain players have, and not many players have that, of creating a brand in a franchise. And those original Titans and Oilers holdovers had the unique privilege of creating what the Tennessee Titans were always going to be known as. Because there are a lot of players that over 11 years, Ramon, you played exactly the same amount of time over 11 years. You have an impact, certainly over a lot of people and a lot of fans and over a city when you play for that long. But there's a unique impact because you can't redo the first decade of a team's existence. You can't change the foundation on which a team's brand and identity was built. And the reason we still talk about the Tennessee Titans the way that we do today in 2023 and the style of football that this team has always played began in large part because of Steve McNair, Eddie George, and Frank Wycheck. And Frank was an equal third of that. The toughness that Steve showcased playing through injuries, Frank was right there with him. The hard-nosed, ground and pound, grab your lunch pail football that people know in Eddie George at the running back position, Frank was an equal part of that at the tight end position as well. And you don't get one without the other two. And we can talk about other iconic figures in Titans history when you talk about Bruce Matthews, you talk about Brad Hopkins, who's going to come on our show later, and people who were instrumental to that smash mouth AFC Central, it's rainy and 45 degrees style of football that the Titans played under head coach Jeff Fisher. But Frank Wycheck was a player that in today's NFL, oh my gosh, would be absolutely thriving with the toughness that he showcased, his ability to catch the football the way that he did, but be so tough to bring down and just so incredible with the toughness that he showcased on the field every day. And that's just talking about Frank the player, right? I thought this was fitting from former Vanderbilt voice Joe Fisher, who tweeted this out yesterday. And I think this is spot on in the best way to describe Frank Wycheck, the broadcaster, said, there are a couple of handful of icons in Nashville media who made an impact, a difference, a long-lasting impression. Frank Wycheck was one of them. Legendary player became legendary personality. He was every man and every fan. Rest in peace, my friend. That was from Joe Fisher on Twitter yesterday, and I think that's the perfect way to sum up exactly how Frank will be remembered in this town. He made that transition so well, and you felt like listening to the Wake Up Zone and listening to him, to Mark, to Kevin, and Kevin's going to join us at 8 o'clock. You felt like you were just sitting on the couch and you were their friend. And we get to do what we do on this show because of the people who came before us and created the foundation as well from a smaller perspective, from Titans' perspective, and created the brand of 104.5 The Zone. And Frank was instrumental in that as well, with Mark, with Kevin, with everyone who was here in the early days of this station and this radio signal. We have the ability to talk with you because of partly the work Frank did. And so, again, on and off the field, when you talk about people who created and sustained the culture of professional sports in Nashville, you have to start that conversation with Frank Wycheck.
You do. And Will, that's greatly said, too. And the other side of that, too, is the history in which this franchise has been. It's been Tennessee tough. You know, it's been that, and he's been a huge part of that. When you look at how he played, the hits, the way he hit people, the way he caught the ball and strived to get extra yards after the catch, that's Tennessee tough. That mantra will reign supreme for a very long time, and I don't think anybody can ever erase that either. That's what's so unique about it is we as players sometimes play just because we love the game. It is what we do. We've dreamed to get into that point to where we can make it to the NFL and where, hear all the stat lines, you're the, top 1%, but it don't matter in those moments because I'm going to play the game the way I play it. And I think that's why Frank is so beloved here now is because he played it a certain way. He was a man of the people. When you saw him, from my understanding, it was never him brushing you off. It was always open arms. It was always just him being Frank. And when you can call somebody by their first name and it not being all of them or just the amount of respect that you have for guys, that's why he will forever be cemented here in this franchise as one of those pillars that help take this franchise over the edge. You think about the good times that this franchise has had as far as the longest yard play, as far as Steve and Eddie and everybody else that came in between those years, Dr. Dyson and so many others. You still say to yourself, Frank is a part of that, and I don't think that'll ever leave. So when it does resonate to how we play this game, the understanding of the joy that you give fans, and Frank's not here to see this, but the fact that we're having this conversation with this many people listening to us this all today and the rest of this weekend, I'm more than sure Titans Radio will do something tonight, too, in the broadcast because Mike Keefe's work with Frank Wycheck, being in this position, the impact that you have and what he's left behind. Hopefully his family's able to hear some of the calls that he'll get today, some of his friends that speak on him, because you don't recognize your impact sometimes because you're so on to the next thing all the time as a player. You're so, hey, what's next for me? And he will be remembered in a very bright way here in Nashville and across the NFL too. Tough loss for sure.
You had mentioned he worked with Mike Keith. He did, after his retirement in 2003, worked with Mike Keith for that year doing color analyst work for Titans Radio. Then, obviously, on the Wake Up Zone here on 104.5 The Zone after that. So that tells me that that's the type of player, and Ramon, you clearly had that kind of quick path to the media side of things. There's not a ton of guys like that can, do what they did, have the career that they did. You mentioned playing 11 seasons in the NFL and then just transition so smoothly into the other side, and where they're not the ones anymore, being, asking or answering the question. They're asking those questions and they're having those hard conversations sometimes, where sometimes you got to be a little brutally honest. So that's why I respect those types of people so much, because you do have to kind of utilize your past, but also know you're on the other side now doing media. I was talking about being an underrated pass catcher. Not here, obviously, people knew that. But I was reading a stat from Jimmy Wyatt, and he said at the time of his retirement, in terms of Wycheck in 2003, he had 505 career receptions. That ranked fourth all-time among tight ends, Shannon Sharp, Ozzie Newsome, and Kellen Winslow. So you can just see there, like, the names that he was with in terms of his production as a tight end.
Went on to play 137 games for the Oilers and Titans, catching 482 passes for 4,958 yards and 27 touchdowns. Frank Wycheck, a Pro Bowler in 1998, 1999, and in 2000. Eddie George said after the Music City Miracle, "I think he's the best tight end in the NFL right now." Says he's bailed us out a lot of crucial situations in big games. He's a special player. I guess you could say he's a magic piece or something. Retired from football in 2004, was a color analyst for Titans Radio with Mike Keith from 2005 to 2016, and on the Wake Up Zone with Mark Howard and Kevin Ingram, a pillar of the Nashville sports community, gone at the age of 52 over the weekend. We take your favorite calls, your favorite stories on Frank Wycheck throughout the morning today at 615-737-1045, where Eric in Nashville will lead us off this morning. What's up, Eric?
Hey, guys, just real sad day. The thing I remember about Frank is he was just an engaging and personable guy. I remember him. He showed up at remotes after games, like at Rio Bravo when they played at Vanderbilt. I definitely remember the Music City Miracle. I didn't have season tickets then, but I got them after that season. And just being in that atmosphere was just so insane. Also, the fact I was downtown and ran into him with Kenny the Mailman. He recognized both of us. We would talk to him. But two of my most favorite memories, one was when he wrestled with TNA, I guess that's what it was, and me and Kenny the Mailman were at the Municipal Auditorium seeing him in the ring. That was great. But also I remember the banter back and forth on the radio with him and Mark Howard at times and stuff. And what Mark, and you guys may have it in the archives, said to him as some sort of charity event or whatever it was, he said that he would walk Frank into the ground.
Mm-hmm.
It's still a great favorite memory. Just such a sad day. And I know he was struggling with the things that he went through with the concussion. Really hate that for him. It's just he definitely will be missed. He's just great and personal guy. Guys, I'll get off and let other people talk. It's just, because I'm tearing up a little bit right now. Y'all have a great day. Y'all take care, and we'll talk again soon.
You too.
Thank you, Eric. The walk-off is the one that everyone fondly remembers. And that is a tweet we got a lot yesterday about the walk-off between Mark Howard and Frank Wycheck. So Mark was walking a lot and said he could walk Frank Wycheck into the ground. And it did not exactly go that way. So they set off a walk-off at the downtown Y, and Mark pulled a muscle, and Frank Wycheck walked on, out-walking Mark Howard, who did not walk him into the ground on that day.
That's awesome. So did they have people like come and see it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
That's what Eric
great.
Eric said he was there.
So Eric was there, yeah.
Eric
okay.
and Kenny the mailman were there
Okay,
for it.
that's
I
pretty
mean, just they were the original just back and forth, and we're gonna have Kevin on at 8 to talk about what it was like to moderate some of those arguments between Frank and Mark. But man, that was what you heard. I mean, every morning after a Titans win or loss, it was Mark and Frank going at it.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that is what I grew up listening to every morning going to school. And I've told you all the stories before of there are certain weekly guests that we would hear every single week, and we'd be in a drive-through trying to order breakfast or going through, or I'm, telling my dad some kind of story about, what's going on at school. It's, hey, shh, wait, I want to hear this real quick. I want to hear what these guys have to say. And certainly that was for good reason. At that time.
Well, he needed you to be quiet. Well,
I know.
That's what it was.
I know. They're breaking down the offensive line, man. I'm getting in the way, just like we do now. Let's go to Joe up next on the phone line, 615-737-1045, where you can join us. What's up, Joe?
Good morning, guys. Very sad day here in Nashville. I got a wonderful memory of Frank, especially this time of year. I don't know, for those of you that don't know, he used to organize a toy run, a motorcycle toy run. And like Moan said, a man of the people, going to be greatly missed here in this town. One of the true legends, and anybody that was around for that Music City Miracle. I have a few friends from Buffalo that call it the Music City Forward Lateral, but they can kiss my butt this morning. Love you, Frank. Y'all have a good day.
Thank you, Joe.
I love it.
That's great.
That's awesome right there, man.
615-737-1045 is our number if you want to join us, if you want to share your favorite memory of Frank Wycheck here on the station or in a Titans uniform. Coming up, there is one stat on Frank that you might not have expected, but one that perfectly describes his career as a Tennessee Titan and also as the author and the catalyst of the Music City Miracle. We remember Frank Wycheck all morning long here on RKW, brewed by 8th and Roast.
It's Ramon, Foster Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Y'all listen up. Right now, they're giving away cash for the holidays with select purchases, okay? Hiller wants to make sure every child experiences the joy of Christmas this year, and they're donating $50 in toys to Tours for Tots with every tankless water heater purchase and giving away a $250 Visa gift card with each unit. You can get a $500 Visa gift card when you buy a select new HVAC system, or a $500 Visa gift card when you purchase a new whole home generator. You might want to look into that. I might look into that one also and get the $500 Visa gift card, considering the storms that we just had. And these purchases all have great financing options also with low monthly payments. Listen up, though. These deals are only available until the end of the year. So schedule today the same way as I do at happyhiller.com.
RKW is brewed by 8th and Roast right here on 104.5 The Zone as we remember Titans legend and iconic 104.5 The Zone voice, Frank Wycheck, here in the show with his passing Saturday afternoon over the weekend. 615-737-1045 is where you can share your favorite Frank Wycheck Titans or Zone memory. Here with us this morning at the F&N Bank Chat, where we broadcast live on 104.5 The Zone TV, Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitter, or Twitch.
Twitch, please.
Thank you so much. Guys, the Frank Wycheck stat that you wouldn't expect, but perhaps is the perfect way to describe his playing career when you talk about the Music City Miracle and one of the most iconic plays in NFL history. For his career, Frank Wycheck was 5 for 6 passing for 148 yards and 2 touchdowns. And David Boclair, who's going to join us at 7:20, wrote yesterday that he was very happy to point out that those numbers resulted in a perfect passer rating, 158.3. That is the highest possible figure that formula of passer rating can give you. So Frank Wycheck, in an era now where we talk about how Derrick Henry compares himself to Peyton Manning all the time, I think maybe Derrick Henry just needs to compare himself to Frank Wycheck.
He should.
That's what I thought.
I know, right? Is Frank Wycheck the best quarterback in franchise history?
615-737-1045.
Hot take.
Definitely, man. Most tight ends, though, usually have a unique arm anyway. Like on most teams, if quarterback 1 is out and quarterback 2 is out too, you usually resort to the tight end. So it's not surprising that Frank is that efficient at throwing the ball around, man. That is some really cool stuff. Well, where do you find stats like that, man?
Well, that is from our good friend David Boclair, who's going to join us in 30 minutes. So I can't take credit for that one. Cannot take credit for that one. It is crazy, too, that on the day of Frank's passing and all the memories we're talking about on social media, that the Bills almost lost another game and almost had their season ended from a tight end lateral from Travis Kelce yesterday, but Kadarius Toney was offsides.
I saw that. And
Yeah.
the first thing that popped in my mind was, why Kadarius Toney? But also in the same sentence is like, well, it's the Bills again. At least they don't have it 2 times in their franchise history happening like that, because it was an equivalent of the Music City Miracle for sure. And I said it correct this time.
Yes, you did.
It wasn't bad. I'll give him credit. But Kadarius Toney just messing it up like he seems to do on certain occasions all throughout the season.
He does.
That's neither here nor there.
Derrick Henry certainly emulating that Frank Wycheck passing ability, a guy from Philadelphia who grew up there, worked at his alma mater, Archbishop Ryan, before relocating to Chattanooga a few years ago. When you look at Frank's career and just how he became a Houston Oiler, this is incredible going back and looking at things like this, guys. Frank Wycheck was a 6th-round pick out of Maryland in the 1993 draft to Washington. And after 2 seasons, he was a $100 waiver claim by the Houston Oilers in 1995. Think about that.
Wow.
A $100 waiver claim by a guy that went to the Pro Bowl in 1998, 1999, and 2000 and caught 482 passes for 4,958 yards and 27 touchdowns.
I wonder if he went and got that $100, because it was definitely worth it. They definitely got a return on investment big time. $100, like, that's very disrespectful in just all aspects of it. But God works in mysterious ways, and he ended up just catapulting his career, legend, and everything around the NFL, man. Sometimes teams are wrong, and Frank Wycheck is another instance of that being the case, where Washington D.C., it was fit for him at the time, and the Titans found a way to make him bloom into what he turned into being, man. But just thinking about the chemistry that they had with just Eddie, with Steve, with, Doc Dyson, so many other guys, the offensive line for sure. Can't forget Brad. I mean, think about that group that they had and how they cultivated this culture, in which, honestly, other than 2019, and there are some other times too, but when you mention the Titans, you mention that group right there, and there's nothing wrong with revisiting the past. There's nothing wrong with having an understanding that, look, we understand our history. We understand where the great moments are, and that group is a huge part of it, and that play is always going to be one of the first ones that come up when you mention the Tennessee Titans. So it's really cool in watching how, when you really put a team together and the right talent around each other, how it looks like. Like, I know right now this team isn't what everybody wanted to be as far as wins and losses, just how it looks. But you also got to think back to those moments and how this franchise got to that point to where they were able to have Steve McNair, Eddie George, Frank Wycheck, the offensive line and defense that they had too. It doesn't happen overnight, and sometimes you have to catch lightning in the bottle, and that group to me was lightning in the bottle for a franchise that absolutely needed to cement itself as a legitimate NFL franchise, because it wasn't a smooth transition from Houston. By all accounts, every story that I've heard and what I've read about, it wasn't a smooth transition into this city, into this market. Heck, majority of the people will still tell you to this day, yeah, I'm a Cowboys fan. Yes, I'm a 49ers fan. Hey, I rooted for that team, that fan, and the Titans absolutely just came in and took that by storm, and Frank Wycheck was a part of that. You still see the jersey, the original jerseys, in the stadium if you open your eyes a little bit. So it matters. Frank is a pivotal part of this franchise as a player, and even much so more. And I say it again, y'all, because we will definitely be paying respect to him all this morning, but to the morning show. And me getting stories from Titans Radio, staff just letting us know, like when they first jumped on air, it was just, hey, let's have a conversation. And it just blossomed and turned and morphed into what we have now. And it's super significant for all of us, being it's a trio group for sure in the morning again, but having a former player on in the morning and just having that side of how sports radio in Nashville cultivated, he was on the forefront of it. And again, whenever we took over the show, it was the idea that, look, that group right there is iconic, and I see why. You hear it, and I can't wait to hear more stories from people that covered them and also just listen.
I also wanted to mention, too, I think it's always, things happen for a reason in terms of whatever career you're in or life in general. And as Frank spent those 2 years at Washington being drafted, he kind of became Frank Wycheck with the Oilers and here in Tennessee, as did kind of Delaney in the way that he was with the 49ers, obviously moved here and found so much success, where we now associate Delaney Walker with the Tennessee Titans, and I think he would too. So I think that's always interesting in careers. Sometimes you don't want to be pushed out the door or, but it happens, and it probably happens for the right reasons, because then you can go somewhere else and find some success, and you find that happening a lot too in the NFL. So
tight end, one of those positions, we talk about it a lot, guys, where the Titans have seemingly always been good. It has always been the case, and you look at the legacy that Frank started at the tight end position certainly begins with him, and that includes home run throwback, which was the play, of course, that became the Music City Miracle, but there was so much more to Frank than just that throw in that play, and we look forward to hearing more stories throughout the morning as we remember his life and legacy here today. Coming up later on the show here in hour 2, we're going to be joined by David Boclair at 7:20, longtime Titans journalist who covered Frank, who knew Frank quite well, and will be able to tell some great Frank stories coming up at 7:20. Kevin Ingram, former host of the Wake Up Zone with himself, with Mark Howard, with Frank Wycheck, will have some outstanding stories on what it was like moderating those arguments between Frank and Mark, arguments that you fondly remember, that I fondly remember from right here on 104.5 The Zone. And Brad Hopkins, former Titans teammate and one of our favorites, will join us as well at 8:20 this morning. 615-737-1045. We invite your favorite Frank Wycheck story, either as a player, as a member of the Wake Up Zone, anything that you want to say to remember him. We do that all morning long here on RKW.
Hey, it's Kayla Anderson with the Ingram Agency, where protection is our promise. Middle Tennessee's leading voice right now in insurance, protecting for your business and family. And you might wonder, okay, who are they exactly? Well, They are a company really founded by Chris Ingram back in 2010. His group of associates do a great job right here in Middle Tennessee. And did you know right now that about half the households in America don't even have any life insurance? And most that do have life insurance, they can't really do much with. It's not enough. And the Ingram Agency offers complimentary reviews of current life insurance policies that you might have. They can assist you in closing any gaps that could lead to financial devastation if something were to happen to someone you care about. You know, we just talked about the recent tornadoes that came through Middle Tennessee this past weekend. If you're thinking of the future and just the natural things that happen in this part of the country, maybe check into this. Obviously, home insurance is part of that. Life insurance is part of that. Just go ahead and check out the Ingram Agency. They work for you. They are a family-owned and operated business company, so you can check them out. It's www.ingramagency.com, where protection is our promise.
What's going on? Good morning. 7:02 from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I'm Robert Walsh. Sunday night football last night, pretty good as Dallas smothered the Eagles 33-13. Dak Prescott was deadly passing the ball, 271 passing yards with 2 touchdowns. The Cowboys are now in a 3-way tie, record-wise, for the lead in the NFC, but the 49ers still hold the tiebreaker over both the Eagles and the Cowboys to hold on to that number 1 spot. Bills got to enact a little bit of revenge over the Chiefs in their win, 20-17. After the game, Patrick Mahomes had a few choice words to say about the officiating after a potential game-winning Kadarius Toney touchdown was called back due to being offsides. The Chiefs' loss drops them to the 3rd spot in the AFC, and potentially Mahomes might have to play the first road playoff game of his career. And Titans tonight taking on the Dolphins in Miami. Lee Company countdown to kickoff will start with 3HL at 4 o'clock. Then at 5 o'clock, Titans Radio takes over, and they will take you all the way up to the 7:15 kickoff. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and the Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
RKW is brewed by 8th and Roast this morning on 104.5 The Zone. A Titans game day. Titans and Dolphins tonight right here, courtesy of Titans Radio on The Zone. Monday Night Football in Miami, where Ramon Foster is ready to go on the sidelines with Voice of the Titans, Mike Keith, Coach Mack, Rhett Bryan, the entire crew. And we've got 3 more hours here talking with you this morning, remembering the life and legacy of Titans legend and iconic 104.5 The Zone voice, Frank Wycheck. Kayla Anderson, Will Boulding here with you in Nashville. Robert Walsh, Reed Smith, making the show happen. Give us your favorite Frank Wycheck memory on the phones throughout the show this morning at 615-737-1045. David Boclair will join us in 15 minutes discussing his career, his time as a broadcaster, from the Music City Miracle to the walk-off against the late Mark Howard as well.
No doubt, man. Big time, Will. Definitely looking forward to hearing from a lot of these folks today, man. Just all in all. And by the way, just for me in general, man, this is super significant as far as Frank's death. Not super significant, but anytime an NFL alum passes away, especially at the young age of 52, I know a lot of people probably thinking to themselves, 52 is old. No, it's not. Is very young, and I just wanted to honestly just say this before we go any further. Like as a former player myself, anytime I see a player passing away, anytime I hear somebody, it's been some 20-year-olds that's passed away this year. It's been some 30-year-olds. Frank was 52. It just pierces a little bit more. And I just yesterday I said this to some guys, to the staff of Titans. I was like, football players deserve to live long. We do. Whether it be mental health, physical health, environment, whether it's, your vices that you have in life, football players still deserve to live long. And Frank was very young at 52 years old. And for a lot of people that love the old ways of the NFL and, man, they used to beat people up and, hey, we want the hard hits back, and the advancement of technology, whether it be cleats, shoulder pads, helmets, the GPS systems that they use, taking out dumb, idiotic crackback plays, the wedge that was on special teams with kickoff and kickoff return where guys brutally beat each other up. We're talking about 300-pounders, 260-pound men running into other 280-pound men. The quality of life that follows in retirement is always going to be how you eat, drink, live, sleep, the people you surround yourself by, the honest conversations that you also have to have with folks, the idea that, look, it's okay to say I need a little help, the idea that understanding that, look, I'm a little off today, the idea that, look, I just need some time to myself. Football players deserve to live long too. We see a bunch of other sports that, Wilt Chamberlain and Dr. J. They're sitting courtside for a very long time and being embraced by their fan base. And Frank Wycheck was one of those guys that's gone too soon. I know his family documented said he fell and hit his head and passed away that way. But, of course, it's been documented through him and others, the struggles that he had. And I just continually say this, too, for the people that want the old brutal style of playing football and for your entertainment. Yes, I understand that it is entertainment. It's a sport that we all choose. And I'll be honest with you, I would not change a thing about my career path. But I'll say time and time again, when it comes down to how we evaluate players and look at bodies and numbers sometimes, after the game, there's still life to be lived. And my point is going to always be for guys that are done playing football, seek help. Always ask questions. If you know there's an avenue for you that you need to stop doing something, fix something, but we see 52 years old. We see 40 years old. We see 30. We've seen some 20-year-olds pass away from football. And I'll just continually say again, football players deserve to live longer. If you see somebody that you know that's real close to you, like, hey, man, let's bring it back in some. Let's reel this back in. I'll tell you all the time, between my wife and kids, my brothers, my brother-in-law, my closest friends, we do check-ins. We have conversations. We always talk about, hey, the hard moments, the tough moments, and just realizing that number that you wore, Frank wore 89, I wore 73, but I'm still a dad to somebody. I'm still an uncle to somebody. I'm still a husband. And when you see players that have those issues, it's not funny. I know a lot of people joke on social media about CTE and mental health and those type of issues all the time, but some of this stuff is real for a lot of people. A lot of people don't know how to handle the stuff that they go through. And I will continually say again, for the people that want the old brutal style of playing ball and saying, hey, you're okay, put some ice on it, rub some salt on it, or some dirt on it, whatever it is, football players deserve to live long too. And I hate that Frank is gone at 52 for this Titans fan base and just for the football world in general. But that's been my thought over like the last few hours and just thinking about his passing. 52 is very young. Quality of life matters, and those mental and physical check-ins matter even more. So I know our condolences to Frank, and there'll be a lot of people that come in and speak highly of him. But as a player, former player myself, that always resonates to me whenever I hear somebody passing away in their 50s, when I know for sure quality of life can be a whole lot longer.
Yeah, and Frank was not just a football player or, somebody who we remember here. Like, he was a dad. I mean, he has 2 daughters that are grown now, obviously, but he was a grandfather. I mean, 50 years old is not old, guys and gals. It's there's still a lot of life to be lived after that. So it's just, I think it's hard for anyone to know that, like, there's so much more life after that. It's gone way too soon, Frank Wycheck, and condolences really to his family, especially because that was their dad or their grandfather. I know what my family means to me, and so I can't imagine, losing somebody that early on. And for those people who remember him, I think he resonated so much because he wasn't just a football player here who made a difference on the field, who left a legacy on the field. But with that transition into media, he came into your homes like we do every single morning. And he had real conversations and conversations where he could maybe connect with you where you never thought he could when he was a football player and you didn't really know exactly who he was as a person. So I think that's what makes this day really hard for just Tennessee Titans fans in general.
Let's go to Mike in Cleveland next, 615-737-1045. Hey, Mike. There it is.
What's up, y'all?
Nice, Mike.
Yeah, I wish I could do it 89 times, real talk. But, yeah, y'all just echoed what I wanted to touch on with Frank. I didn't want to bring up the whole CTE thing, but what I wanted to say about as far as with Frank, when all that stuff was going on in the NFL, every morning Frank never kept his mouth shut about what he was going through. And I mean, us longtime listeners, we could hear what he was going through, but he advocated and pushed so hard for ex-players to get medical assistance, whether it's paying their bills or it was just getting help with the trauma that they had went through. That's one thing I remember about Frank. He was always, and then him and the back and forth with a journalist that that we all hate, that we all love to hate. That was the beginning of PK. I'm gonna say his name. Hold on, but that was the beginning of PK. Was all the back and forth with him, Frank, and Mark. That used to get me up some mornings. And the first sports fest that the Zone put on, I remember Frank being there, and he signed every freaking autograph. He looked like a president. He was taking pictures with little babies. He was signing everything. And me and my homeboy had a running joke. You always knew a real Middle Tennessean because he had at least 2 Frank Wycheck autographs, I got about 5 of them, So, real talk, man. Rest in peace, Frank Wycheck. And I just want to, let y'all know I was praying. Me and my small group, we was praying for everybody in Middle Tennessee. I got my church because a lot of people was hitting us up asking if my family was okay down there. So my church, we gonna pull together and donate to to donate to the fund for the tornadoes and stuff. And yeah, man, y'all have try to have a blessed morning. Rest in peace, Frank. And I'm glad all y'all is okay. Real talk. And get Kevin Ingram to do one of his impersonations, please. All right, so
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Appreciate the call. There's Mike in Cleveland. Long-time Zone listener. Absolutely. Coming up next, David Boclair will join us. Longtime Titans journalist who covered Frank Wycheck, the player, knew Frank Wycheck, the broadcaster, and will speak to the legacy that he leaves this morning behind. Frank Wycheck passing away at the age of 52 over the weekend as we remember him and honor him throughout the show this morning. David Boclair joins us coming up next. Hey, it's Will Bowling here for my friends at Lee Company. Do you have a ceiling light fixture that flickers? Do you need an extra outlet or two? Or do you have wall switches that just don't seem to work quite right? Well, they all seem to be simple issues. However, they are rarely do-it-yourself projects. Dealing with electricity requires the expertise of an experienced professional, and you need to call the pros over at Lee Company. Their electrical team can solve any problem you have safely and efficiently. And right now, you can enjoy $20 off an electrical service call for a limited time. All you got to do is call them, 615-567-1000, or go online to leecompany.com for an appointment. During the holiday season, when we're hosting friends and family, we've got company over seemingly all the time. Make sure that your house, your home, is ready to go. So if you have a ceiling light fixture that flickers, if you need an extra outlet or two, or those wall switches just don't seem to work 100% right, give Lee Company a call and save $20 off an electrical service call for a limited time. 615-567-1000. That's the number to call online at leecompany.com. That's Lee Company, all you need. RKW is brewed by 8th and Roast right here on 104.5 The Zone. 615-737-1045. We invite your favorite Frank Wycheck memories this morning as we remember him here on the show with Ramon Foster and Kayla Anderson. I'm Will Bowling, and joining us is a man who knew Frank Wycheck very well. Longtime writer covering the Tennessee Titans and a longtime contributor here on 104.5 The Zone. He is David Boclair. David, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Will. How are you doing?
We are doing all right, and we appreciate you joining us this morning as we remember Frank and honor a man who, as a player, as a broadcaster, was just synonymous with Nashville sports and with Tennessee Titans football. David, as you reflect back and just pick one thing to remember Frank by the most, what do you think about this morning?
You know, I think about what an odd study he was. I wrote about this a little bit yesterday on Facebook for a guy who was so important to that team for so many years, particularly when they first showed up here, and who was so productive, relative to other players at his position in the league. He was really insecure about his spot on the team. I don't know how many times I'd conclude an interview with him and say, thanks for your time, Frank, whatever. He's like, yeah, anytime, Dave, he says, they're going to cut me next week anyway. And I'd be like, what are you talking about? They're going to cut you. And he lived for a guy who was a 3-time Pro Bowler. He really did think he was on the verge of getting cut every single day. And I think it goes back to, the fact that he was a prolific running back at Archbishop Bryan High School in Philadelphia, and having grown up in Philadelphia area, I know how competitive the parochial league there was. So if you're one of the best players in that league, you've got reason to feel like you're pretty good. But then he goes to Maryland, and they tell him, you're not good enough to be a running back here. We need you to be a tight end. And he wasn't really crazy about that, but made himself into a pretty good tight end. I think, in fact, the all-time leading receiving tight end in school history there, and does enough to get himself drafted in the 6th round. Great, you're a draft pick. You're coming in the league. You got reason to think you're going to have a pretty good career. And then for 2 seasons in Washington, has a hard time getting on the field, carving out any sort of role there. And so by the time he joined the Oilers in 1995, he was thinking again, I don't know if I'm good enough for the NFL. And it was sort of that. It was sort of that notion that really drove him, and he worked to kind of do everything right all the time, and just make sure he didn't give them any excuse to actually follow through and cut him the way he thought he was going to be cut at any point.
David Boclair, our guest this morning on RKW, and talking about Frank, David, there's a unique opportunity for him and for those original Titans to build the identity of what it means to be a Tennessee Titan. And we spoke about it this morning, that when you talk about those early days, it's Steve McNair, Eddie George, and Frank Wycheck who kind of built that. And really, in so many ways, David, he built what it meant, and that identity of putting on the two-tone blue, and originally what it meant to be a member of this organization.
Yeah, and he was a guy like it's interesting. Like Eddie George, of course, is Eddie George, right? Like you couldn't help. If you were a fan at that time, you couldn't help but root for Eddie George. He's just a star. He's just natural. I mean, that's the way he is. Steve McNair, we all know people didn't want to like him at first, and he eventually won them over. But Frank is sort of that guy. He's not a star. He's more that he's a guy who's easy to root for, and people sort of, among the guys that maybe you didn't know when the franchise arrived in town, Frank was a guy that people just sort of gravitated to easily because he, because of the way he played, because he had that personality. And you even think about his time, on this radio station in this time slot or whatever too. I think back, to the regular Frank, do me a favor segments, right? I mean,
Right.
It's funny because like same sort of thing. Like Eddie George is not a guy that people think, like, yeah, you'd love to meet Eddie George and but you'd be a little bit starstruck or whatever. But Frank's a guy that everybody feels like, yeah, hey Frank, do me a favor. I think there was something really poignant and really telling about that in terms of how fans felt about him, that segment was able to work on this show and became a pretty popular one there for a while, and I know he enjoyed it too. He had a lot of fun with it.
Bulky, when it comes down to his legacy here, and we talked about it earlier in the 6 o'clock, when it means to be Tennessee tough. You look at the way Frank played. That's why you hold on to that mantra, that slogan, is because of how he played the game, and others also. But just what was those conversations like with him after those games where it was super tough and he knew it was a hard-fought game for himself? Did he really relish in those moments right there?
Yeah, he loved. Yeah, as you know, I think most guys in those rooms. I mean, he loved the competition aspect of it, and he was a guy that you knew had played hard, and he was so important. Like I say, Steve McNair eventually won the public over. Frank was really, really important to that happening too, because the way that the staff coached Steve in those early days, particularly as a starter, was they told him, don't pass up one to get to another, meaning if you see a guy open, don't be waiting for somebody else to get open further downfield or whatever. If you can complete a pass to the first guy you see, then go ahead and do it. Well, Frank was that guy. Like, that's how Frank put up those numbers, right? I mean, he was running those short and intermediate routes, and he was kind of the first guy to come open so many times. It's one thing to run those routes. It's another thing to run them correctly and get open and give your quarterback that option. So he was the guy who sort of helped Steve really settle in and kind of give the offense an identity. And it was never going to be a flashy, splashy, big play offense. It was it was going to grind you up a little bit and beat you down and keep the chains moving, and he was so important to that. Again, when people think about the offense in those days, I think that Steve McNair and Eddie George are the first two names that come to mind. But Frank was just critical to everything that was going on in those moments.
And in those moments, though, too, of course, he had some great moments, too. Of course, 3-time Pro Bowler and made All-Pro also. I got to ask you, because he seems like he was super humble when it came down to him doing his job. When he started making those Pro Bowls, did he switch up a little bit, just a little bit, Bulky? Please tell me he went out and got like a big Escalade or a Mercedes or something. He had to do something, right?
I don't recall. I don't ever recall him having a head-turning car relative to other guys in the parking lot there. I couldn't tell you what he was driving at that point. And those are the days that he was getting a little older. He'd been in the league a few years at that point, and that's what every time, like the moment Aaron Kinney gets drafted, he's like, oh, that's it. They're done with me. And those were the. Those are the things, again, that it just drove him. He was constantly, and I think part of it was because he loved the game so much and he loved being a part of this team. And, he didn't want to have it taken away until it absolutely had to be. In fact, his last year in the league, I remember his last contract when it was up, I thought this is going to be his victory lap now. He's going to go home. He's going to sign with the Philadelphia Eagles, play another year or two there, and then be done. And Chad Lewis was tight end for the Eagles at the time, and I remember talking to Frank, and he was telling me that Chad wants me to come up there and play with him, and I thought, oh, absolutely, it's going to be a no-brainer. That's what's going to happen. And he ended up re-signing here for one more year because he just couldn't just couldn't see him. He'd see himself being anywhere else. He was, when you talk about the idea that he defined what it was to be a Titan kind of out of the gate here. He very much felt that way and couldn't see himself even playing back home, let alone anywhere else in the NFL by that point.
David Boclair joining us now on Ramon, Kayla, and Will. Good to talk with you, my friend. When it comes to just maybe the impact he made, not just within the Titans and Oilers organization with those fans, but really with recent players. And I know you and I both covering Delanie Walker, that's a name that got brought up a lot by Delanie Walker. Just how much did his, attitude and how he played on the field transcend even to guys now who know who he is and respect that?
Yeah, well, I mean, he set a standard, right? He put up numbers. Records are made to be broken, and Delanie was a guy who threw himself into the history of the team when he was here. He wasn't here just to collect a paycheck and further his brand, if you will. He wanted to he bought into what was here, and of course Frank was around as part of the broadcast crew for a while, and in doing the radio show and whatnot. So he wasn't just a name in the old media guides or whatever, and in the record book. Yeah, I mean, he was he was a guy who was there, and you could talk to him about it, and it was important to Frank to share some of those memories and some of the things he went through. And hey, don't take for granted the fact that these fans are great here in town. When we first showed up, we had no fans in the stands and whatnot, that sort of thing. And Delanie's a guy who cares a lot and took it to heart. And I think I think Frank sort of enjoyed that Titan emeritus role that he sort of had by default, just by being around as part of the broadcast crew for a while, and they sort of be looked at as maybe a little bit of royalty or whatnot. He again, it wasn't just that he was an NFL player. He was he looked at himself as a Tennessee Titan, and really lived and died with this team's successes and failures, even after his playing career was done.
And that was my next question, because you were around him so much. You interviewed him, Bokey, but now we see the other side where these players are going and they're doing the media side, right? Is there any point that you remember where you were like, okay, Wycheck is probably going to have some success doing the media side of things, whatever that might be?
I don't know that. I don't know that. I think maybe the first time he did a preseason game on TV, I don't think I thought of him in that respect beforehand. I mean, he was always very accommodating with the media, very comfortable talking to the media. But I never got the sense. Brad Hopkins was the guy in those early days who sort of dominated the conversation. I mean, you knew that he had real aspirations and always wanted to talk about that and talk to you about kind of how you did your job and some of that. And you didn't get that from Frank, but the moment that he did a preseason game and you heard him on the TV and he was, had great insight and seemed very comfortable doing that, you kind of thought, oh yeah, this is going to work for him if this is what he wants to do.
David Boclair, our guest this morning on 104.5 The Zone. David, his 5 for 6 passing career stat with 148 yards and 2 touchdowns, not even mentioning home run throwback, where I know you were around and he was adamant that he knew it was a lateral because he practiced it. It's supposed to be a lateral. It's called throwback, not throw forward for that reason. Just that play specifically, David, and his role in it. It's amazing that nationally, obviously, that is how so many people are going to remember Frank. But that was a play that Jeff Fisher, the Titans, and Frank were very specifically well drilled in. And when it came time to pull it out, they were ready.
Yeah, and that's that kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about how he was a guy who tried to do everything right. Coaches could trust him in those moments. And we had the conversation numerous times over the years, and he would always, it'd get his dander up a little bit because he'd say, I know it was a legal play because it was my job to throw it backward.
Right.
And it tells you, it tells you something though. It's, the details of the play were important to him, right? It's not just, well, I just got to get the ball and get it over to Dyson or whoever was supposed to. Derek Mason, I think, was the guy who was supposed to be there. It's not I have to get the ball over to that side of the field. It's I have to lateral it back to a person on that side of the field. And so, you could trust him to do that. And when he would say that to me, he would say it so convincingly that whatever the optics of the video look like, and it's tough when you watch it, and the fact that he's falling back doesn't make it look any easier or any clearer to anybody. But that, in my mind, always sealed the deal. The fact that he was so certain about what he had to do and what he was trying to do that there's no doubt in my mind that it had to be a lateral, at least to some very small degree.
David Boclair, our guest this morning on RKW. David, great stuff as we remember a man that is larger than life here in Nashville as a player, as a broadcaster. Certainly lots of great stories this morning, and we look forward to remembering his life and legacy throughout the day. Appreciate you coming on to help us.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks, David.
Absolutely. There's David Boclair with us this morning. A perfect way to describe a man who treated every day like he was an undrafted player. And Ramon, you've spent a lot of time with a lot of players who were drafted, and that is a lot easier said than done to spend your career in a way where you act like you're undrafted, like David wrote yesterday. Good stuff.
It was real cool, man. That's exactly what was my mind thought behind all things Bokey was saying, man. He's just a grinder, dude. You got to appreciate and love that.
Coming up, I want to go back to when Frank Wycheck was inducted into the Titans Ring of Honor in 2008, and what owner at the time, K.S. Bud Adams, said about Frank and about the early memories of Tennessee Titans football. We'll do that coming up next.
Hey, it's Kayla Anderson and Ramon Foster with Window Nation. And now, the time is winter. And yes, those temperatures are dropping rapidly. Energy costs are on the rise. And if you have old drafty windows, your furnace is working harder than ever to keep your family warm. Window Nation wants to help this month with 0% financing for 5 years, plus 2 free windows with every 2 you buy. Now is the time to protect your family from those elements, lower those energy costs, and upgrade the look and feel of your home.
As Kayla just told you, winter is coming. It is on the way. The air is getting colder by the day. It's in the 20s, 30s today, okay? Energy prices are increasing. So now's the time to replace those old windows and make sure you keep all your good heat in, okay? It's just that simple. Right now, you can save up to 30% of your energy bills by switching to Window Nation windows. Here's the other part behind it. Window Nation has installed nearly 2 million windows with a 96% perfection rate, making them one of the best window companies in the country. If you need new windows in your house of all shapes and sizes, no matter the quantity, too, reach out to the people that we know at Window Nation. That's 866-90-NATION. Go to windownation.com.
RKW is brewed by 8th and Roast right here on 104.5 The Zone. And coming up in 15 minutes, we will be joined by Kevin Ingram as he remembers his friend and Titans broadcaster and legend, Frank Wycheck, coming up at 8 o'clock this morning. 615-737-1045. Frank's former teammate, Brad Hopkins, another player who made that transition from Titan to media member here in Nashville as well. He'll join us coming up in about a half hour at 8:20. Guys, when Frank Wycheck was inducted into the Titans-Oilers Ring of Honor and later enshrined together in the franchise's Hall of Fame, K.S. Bud Adams wanted to induct him, Eddie George, and Steve McNair into the Ring of Honor all at the same time in 2008. When he did, said at the time, "These are three of our greatest players. I am thrilled that they will go in together because they helped us create the great following that we have here in Tennessee, and they had so much success together. All three embody what being a professional football player should entail: hard work, heart, passion, effort, and success." That was important at the time in 2008 that Steve, Frank, and Eddie all joined the Titans Ring of Honor together in 2008. And those names are enshrined with the best to ever wear the Love You Blue, the two-tone blue, and ever represent this franchise.
That's phenomenal stuff right there, man. To even be in the conversation of being one of the greatest players in this franchise history, man, it speaks volumes right there. Again, it's one of those things where I've kind of said earlier, man, and I have people say this all the time, sometimes you have to be willing to receive love and stuff like that. So I'm actually happy that, Frank had the opportunity to hear those words said about him in those moments, especially with as iconic as those guys are at their positions. He held up his end of it, too, and there's nothing better as a player knowing that you held up your end of greatness also, man. Good. Well, that's my first time hearing that, and that is awesome to hear.
Yeah, I mean, for them to go in together, it was important because that kind of was significant in the fact that they really were the Titans and Oilers, and what they did for this franchise is still talked about to this day and will always be talked about. And, for anybody who is a Titans fan, knows that, or comes in and, learns about the history, it's so important. And to know that, all of them had been able to see that happen, obviously, besides Steve McNair, very, very important. So I think it's also one of those things where I've had people asking on the F&M Bank chat us this morning, what about retiring his number? What do you think about that? What could they possibly do? Do you think that that's something they can do? Do you think it's something they should do? And I think it's a fair question.
Yeah, I mean, three-time Pro Bowler, a guy that certainly built the identity of what it means to be a Titan. I mean, you've got a weekend next weekend where the Oilers jerseys are going to be worn once again and fitting that a week after Frank's passing, you're going to be wearing the Oilers blue against Houston in the city of Nashville this next weekend. I think it's a hard question to answer, just, things being so recent. But he is a guy whose name is in the Ring of Honor and up on the stadium, has been since 2008.
That's some big time stuff right there, man. I'm just glad we have an opportunity to celebrate him here, man. Still very, very recent. I can't wait to hear what the broadcast is going to be like tomorrow, and also just hearing from guys like Rhett and Mike Keefe and Coach Mack. And not me personally having realized he was also in the booth with Mike Keefe, too. Like, he's done a lot, and it's been very significant. And honestly, Will, to your point, you've been here in Middle Tennessee. We didn't have Titans Radio in West Tennessee where I was raised at, but you were able to hear him in those moments of growing up, watching him be a better pro, getting better at the radio side, and it's very charismatic from my understanding. And one of the coolest things I've heard from the Titans Radio crew was the idea that they always used to just get on each other, too, and how Frank and the crew just went back and forth and what that meant to him. That type of joshing around, man, just really takes you to a real good space when you're capable of doing those things on air. It makes the crowd be very invited into the conversation, too.
Longtime Houston Chronicle writer and Zone contributor John McClain had this to say on Twitter yesterday, saying, Oilers practiced against the Redskins in Maryville, Tennessee. Washington had a tight end named Frank Wycheck. He looked good in practice. When he was placed on waivers, Oilers signed him. The rest is Oilers/Titans history. Frank was a terrific player and a splendid sports talk show host and analyst. Rhett Bryan yesterday adding his thoughts on Twitter saying Frank Wycheck was an integral part of 104.5 The Zone and Titans radio for many years. News of his passing is surreal and sad to say the least. Our thoughts and prayers go out to his family at this time. And Rhett adds, as I prepare to fly to Miami, I think of the many flights where he was my seatmate. And I think, too, again, on the day of the Titans playing tonight, we will leave the Titans radio crew to give their own tribute in their own way and in their own words tonight as they take the air for Titans and Dolphins. But certainly with our visit with Mike on Friday, with Coach Mack on Thursday, and with Rhett Wednesday, it's a celebration and a legacy that we will continue to discuss throughout the week on Frank. But Ramon mentioned it earlier. It'll be a special and emotional broadcast tonight, I know, for the Titans radio crew who shared a booth with Frank for a lot of years. So certainly looking forward to hearing the way they honor him tonight. But coming up next, the man who shared a show with Frank Wycheck on this station and this time slot, Kevin Ingram, joins us on RKW coming up next.
Hey, don't go through another year with that awful joint pain. Call QC Kinetics now and make 2024 the year you are back to living normal life again. Hey, it's Kayla Anderson. This time of year, some of us start to feel it. Those aches and pains in the back and those joints. QC Kinetics can give you your life back. They are the nation's leader in regenerative medicine. And these are actually all natural treatments. They can repair and restore that damaged tissue, giving you pain-free movement again. And that is something we all want to hear and want. QC Kinetics has tens of thousands of satisfied patients around the entire country. People who have had that knee pain, that back pain, that shoulder pain, a pain that comes up sometimes in those winter months if you have had surgery in the past. I know I feel it in my wrist. They're able to get that long-lasting relief with no surgery this time, no drugs, no downtime. So if you have pain from that old injury or pain associated, let's say, with arthritis, you need to check this out. It is the future of joint pain relief. Make the call now so you can get the most out of 2024. It is easy. Call QC Kinetics at 615-249-4024. That's 615-249-4024.
What's going on? 8 o'clock. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I'm Robert Walsh. Sunday Night Football. Good game last night as Dallas smothered the Eagles 33-13. Dak Prescott finished with 271 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. The Cowboys are now in a 3-way tie for the lead in the NFC, but the 49ers hold the tiebreaker over both the Eagles and the Cowboys to hold on to that number 1 spot. The Bills got a little bit of revenge over the Chiefs last night, 20-17. After the game, Patrick Mahomes, he had a few choice words about officiating after a potential game-winning Kadarius Toney touchdown was called back due to being offsides. The Chiefs' loss drops them to the 3rd spot in the AFC and potentially must play their first road playoff game of Patrick Mahomes' career. And tonight, Titans taking on the Dolphins in Miami. Lee Company countdown to kickoff with 3HL starts at 4 o'clock. Then Titans Radio takes over at 5, and they will take you all the way up to the 7:15 kickoff. For your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and the Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
RKW is brewed by 8th and Roast right here on 104.5 The Zone as we continue into Hour 3 this morning, remembering Titans legend and iconic 104.5 The Zone host, Titans radio color commentator Frank Wycheck this morning here on RKW. Ramon Foster joining us from Miami, where he'll be on the sidelines tonight with Titans radio. Kayla Anderson, Robert Walsh, Reed Smith making the show happen. My name is Will Bowling, and joining us now, the man who shared a microphone and a show with Frank Wycheck, he is Kevin Ingram with us here on the show this morning. Kevin, thank you so much for doing this. Good morning.
Oh, good morning, Will. Yeah, very, very happy to come on and talk about Frank. We had a lot of fun. We worked together on that show for 14 years and kind of caught the tail end of his career as far as covering the Titans and saw the miracle play and all that stuff. So, yeah, it's very much a pleasure and honor to come on and talk about 89.
Well, Kevin, it is hard to sum up a man like Frank Wycheck in just the time that we have. But how will you remember him, the player who brought that blue-collar mentality to the field every day, but as a friend and as a broadcaster as well?
Certainly he was a great player, 505 catches during his career, and I know you guys have talked about the miracle play. I caught a little bit with David Boclair a little bit earlier. But for me, more than the football playing part of it is sort of the friend and the fellow broadcaster, excuse me, and show host. We worked together with Mark Howard and Paul Bible was our original producer back in 2004 when we started the show. But I just had a lot of fun working with Frank all those years. And, when we started, and I didn't know Frank very well, I'd covered the team, like I say, the last few years that he played there. But and I met him or interviewed him a few times. But really working with somebody like that on a daily basis, I didn't really know what to expect. And a guy who's, been a great football player, now transitioning to a broadcasting role, I wondered if I could find some, excuse me, a little bit of a morning breath here, or morning voice here, find some common ground with Frank. And I found out very quickly that we had a lot of things in common, our kind of shared love of old rock bands and Star Wars movies and golf and wrestling and all sorts of stuff like that. And so we bonded pretty quickly, and we just had a lot of fun messing with Mark and getting into big arguments. And I was kind of the referee for those things when him and Mark would go at it. So that part was fun. But, yeah, I found out very quickly that Frank and I had a lot in common. And a lot of it is we're exactly the same age. He's 2 weeks older than me. So we'd experienced a lot of the similar things, even though we lived in different parts of the country at similar parts of our lives. So, it was fun just to get to know him and be friends with him and work with him for all those years.
Kevin Ingram joining us now, and Ramon, Kayla, and Will. Kevin, when it came to what made him such a popular radio personality, because that's a lot of the things we're seeing and hearing today from the fans is they loved him as a player, maybe even loved him more, when they get to listen to him every morning waking up. But what made him such a transcending, radio personality from the field?
Yeah, Kayla, I think a lot of it was they felt like he was relatable. For as great of a football player as he was one of those guys who he always felt like he was on the verge of being cut from the team, and I think he sort of carried that persona into his radio career too, and people felt like they could relate to that. And some of the things I described a minute ago, of him liking just sort of normal stuff that average people like, I think people felt like they connected with him in that way. But I think too is he had a great respect for just your average blue-collar person that is going to a job or stuck in traffic or all those things. I think he could relate to that, and people could relate to him in that way. And I think people just got a kick out of him trying to do goofy stuff on the show. We'd have donut eating contests, and we had the big walk-off. I'm sure we'll probably talk about that in a minute. But, he would go out and try to hit off fast-pitch softball pitchers, or when the Goodlettsville team made the Little League World Series, we did a thing out at Davidson Academy one morning where he tried to hit off Brock Byers, who was the big star on that team, and that didn't go especially well. That was pretty funny. But I think just sort of the everyman part of Frank is what connected so well with listeners.
And you knew one of us was going to ask about that walk-off. Tell us where, that started and just how fun. We're still talking about it to this day. Why did people just connect and find that so great?
Well, it started with Mark trying to get into better shape to begin with. And so Mark had been walking a lot and lost some weight and was feeling good. And so he gets to talking a little on the show and talking about how, I've been walking a lot, so we'll go out into the track and I'll walk you into the ground, was his famous words that he told Frank. And so we set this whole thing up where we do this walk-off at the downtown YMCA, just, right there on Broadway downtown. And so we get down there and we set the whole thing up, and the contest was going to be like during the 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock hour or whatever. And they were going to see who could walk the most laps, or I don't even remember what the contest was. But very quickly, Mark bowed out and his, I don't know, he had a hamstring problem or something. And Frank's just up there running laps around the track. And, they had the track kind of goes around the top there at the Y. And so, it just became stuff of legend after that. And we played clips of Mark, saying, I'm going to walk you into the ground. And we had Tiger Woods clips of saying his glutes weren't firing. And it just became a whole thing. It was awesome. It was so funny to sit and watch. Like Paul Bible and I, we just sat back and watched the whole show. Kaharski was there too. And it was so funny. Like it just became a classic bit on the show.
It's great.
Kevin Ingram with us this morning. We're talking about Frank Wycheck. Kevin, I have to ask you guys, because it's part of Frank and you guys' legacy, man, but the chemistry that you guys had in the morning to get on each other and just also the transparency that Frank brought along with that, with, the stuff that he dealt with personally, and how did you guys just really catch all of that in a bottle into creating what you guys had in the morning?
Yeah, Ramon, that's a great question, because Frank was pretty open about a lot of his struggles, with the concussions and things he had during his playing career. And certainly, to be honest, you could see how it affected him after football, and watching him over about a 10-year span and just watching his health and those things and how he progressed. It was difficult. To me, it was difficult to watch at times, but he was very honest about it, and we were very respectful of that. For as much as we all joked around together, there was a lot of love between the folks on that show, and we cared deeply about Frank and his health, and just wanted all the best for him. But we just tried to do the best we could to be respectful of him and some of the things that he was going through post football. But we just found a way to connect with him and talk about his football experiences, and the miracle play was always front and center. And he did such a great job of telling stories from his career and fun things that happened. And Ramon, I know you probably have a lot of these same stories from your playing days, just little things that happened during games, not necessarily the big plays in the games, but the stuff on the side. One of the stories that I always thought was the funniest was when the Titans and Raiders were playing the AFC Championship game, and I believe it was 2002. They were out in Oakland, and at halftime, LL Cool J was the halftime performer, and I guess they didn't get everybody off the field fast enough before the Titans wanted to go back out and get ready to start the second half. There got to be some jawing between some members of the Titans and LL Cool J, and Frank's telling this whole story about how it all went down. I thought that was the funniest thing ever. But those stories to me are the parts that I really enjoyed hearing about with his career, and just stuff that went on in the locker room and little games they played, and certainly his respect for guys like Bruce Matthews and Steve and Eddie and all those players during that time frame. I just thought that stuff was really cool.
Did you, as far as you guys' is time on the station, did you understand how big you guys were getting or was at the time too? Because me coming in after you guys, I didn't fully understand it. I do now, of course, been around Mike Keefe and Rhett Bryan and the whole crew. But did you guys realize just how big and powerful you were as a morning show?
I don't know that we did. I don't know that I did for sure. Maybe those other guys did, but to me, it was just always it was a fun thing, and I went in every morning and we did our thing and went home. I don't know that I ever really realized how many people we were connecting with until years later, and I still have people come up to me every day and said they listened, or I'll have people that are in their 20s say, "Yeah, I grew up listening to you on the radio," and I don't know how I'm supposed to feel about that. Or people that say they were inspired to get into broadcasting by our show and that. But I really don't know that I did know or maybe fully appreciate what was going on when you're in the moment, because you guys know you're doing a show and it's a job and you try to be professional in those things, and then years later I think it really hit me, especially Mark passed away in July of 2022, and now losing Frank too. I think it's made me reflect a lot on that time and just how much fun it was, and what all we were able to achieve while we were on that station.
Kevin Ingram, our guest this morning here on RKW. Kevin, we mentioned a Bud Adams statement when Frank Wycheck, Steve McNair, and Eddie George all went into the Titans-Oilers Ring of Honor together in 2008. And I'm sure you remember as well that the original mentality of what it meant to be a Titan was created in part by Frank, by Steve, and by Eddie. And when you talk about the Mount Rushmore of Titans in those early days, it was important to Bud Adams. It was important to the Titans for those three to be honored together. And Kevin, just the legacy that Frank leaves along with those two, certainly hard to put into words.
Yeah, no doubt, Will. I remember being there that night when they honored those three, and to have had a chance to be there and cover those teams during that time frame, and especially the Super Bowl run, was really, really cool to be around those guys a little bit. Those were foundational pieces for the Titans. As the Oilers transitioned into the Titans between 1998 and 1999, and they had the unveiling of the uniforms. I remember those were some of the guys that were out there. I know Blaine Bishop was there, and maybe Craig Hentrick. There are a few others, but there were guys from those teams that you'll always remember being there. And those three were right front and center with Bruce Matthews, he was getting toward the end of his career, but he was a Hall of Fame player, maybe the greatest offensive lineman ever. He played all the different positions and was so great at all of it. But yeah, you think of other guys. Javon Curse was another one who was one that really cranked things up in terms of the Titans becoming the team and the beloved team that they were in this area. He was a rookie on that Super Bowl team, and he was a total game changer when they drafted him out of Florida. And he was just a great pass rusher and really a game changer for that defense. Samari Roll, and you think about Derek Mason was on the early part of his career, and Chris Sanders, and I can go down a list. I mean, there are lots of guys on those teams, but yeah, Steve and Frank and Eddie from the offensive side for sure were ones that were really the faces of the franchise back during that time.
Kevin Ingram, our guest this morning on Ramon, Kayla Will. Kevin, we can't thank you enough for doing this, for remembering your friend and Nashville's friend, really, in so many ways, and Frank Wycheck this morning. Thank you so much. We appreciate the time.
Hey, glad to. Thanks a lot. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, Kev.
Yes, sir. There's Kevin Ingram with us this morning, and we transition next to a teammate of Frank Wycheck's, Brad Hopkins, who Kevin mentions there, one of the other members of those original Titans teams that helped build the foundation of the Tennessee Titans today, as we continue to remember an iconic voice on 104.5 The Zone and Frank Wycheck after this. Hey, it's Will Bowling here for my friends at Brentwood Hearing Center, who understands choosing a hearing care provider is a big decision. Brentwood Hearing Center's number one priority is delivering exceptional patient care. Their staff has many years of expertise in hearing health care. They're well trained on a variety of services ranging from evaluations to treatment. And when you get your hearing checked, you get a advanced hearing device from Brentwood Hearing Center. That's not just a one-stop process. They're going to be with you for all the follow-ups, the maintenance, cleanings, making sure that not only you get hearing your best, but you stay hearing your best. 615-377-0420. That's the number to call for yourself or for a family member who might be joining you during the holiday season in crowded environments with family opening presents. You want to make sure that everybody can hear clearly what you're communicating in a crowded room this holiday season. Over 30 years, one home, proudly serving Brentwood from the same location for more than 30 years. 615-377-0420. That's the number to call online at BrentwoodHearingCenter.com. That's Brentwood Hearing Center. Better hearing, better life. RKW is brewed by 8th and Roast right here on 104.5 The Zone. As Hour 3 continues, have time for your favorite Frank Wycheck stories coming up in just a few minutes at 615-737-1045 in the F&M Bank chat as we stream live on Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. And joining us now on the phone lines, he is former Tennessee Titan, our very good friend, Brad Hopkins. Brad, good morning.
Good morning, Ramon, Kayla, and Will. How are you guys this morning?
We're
Brad.
doing all right. We have spent a lot of time reflecting and reminiscing on the legendary life and career of Titans tight end Frank Wycheck. Brad, as you remember him, your former teammate, what do you think of the most when you remember Frank Wycheck?
You know, unfortunately, we used to make fun of his condition, the condition of him getting concussed a lot, because we were just ignorant to, I guess, the long-term effects of suffering so many hits that Frank took. And I remember sharing with my wife maybe a couple of years ago how we used to just go Frankie Wycheck and talk about, like, you know, almost act as if you were a loony, because that, in essence, sometimes was how it seemed when you talked to him. And it wasn't funny. And it took a long time for us to realize, you know, once concussions became mainstream and talking about it and dialoguing about the effects and how we can make the game safer. It just, you know, when you look back at some of the things you did as dumb kids and, you know, even though you were a teammate, and we all wished each other well, of course, on the field. I mean, it's a risk that everybody takes. But just taking light of that, you know, that's something that I'll always remember and always regret, really, because, you know, it affects your decision-making. It affects everything that you do, your quality of life. And we could never have foreseen the magnitude of how that was going to affect his life. You know, something that we took just so simple. I remember back in the day when we used to get knocked out, fellas, and you remember Ramon, he'd just grab out one of those little smelling salt tablets and stick it under your nose, and off you went. You know, it took us a long time to realize that, you know, we needed to be more aware of how these hits to our head affect us and how ultimately they were going to affect our lives. So that's something I hugely regret doing, but, you know, I was a part of that.
Brad, we talked earlier with David Boclair, who told us that Frank really played every day like he was an undrafted rookie and really played every day in practice and in games thinking he was going to get cut the next week if he didn't totally bring it. Did you see that from him, and just what was it like sharing a practice field, a locker room with a guy who was truly bringing 110% and bringing his lunch pail every day to the practice field?
He was an unassuming superstar. I think that whenever you're released from a team and you get a new lease in life, it kind of puts things in a different perspective. And I think that him playing for Washington for those couple of years before he found his way to Houston, it sobered him. And I think that him getting a chance to get out there on the football field with us and continue to do something that he was passionate about, I think that he took it in a different perspective. So it wasn't a surprise that he didn't look at himself like somebody that, you know, deserved accolades. You know, he was a guy that was one of us, and his personality to me just really, it didn't take on that life. You know what I mean? He was just one of us, just a regular guy. You know, didn't want any more than anybody else, didn't want any less than anybody else. Was always a hard worker. I mean, made plays when we made plays, and of course made as many mistakes as the rest of us did. And he took those mistakes to heart to not want to make them again. So that's not a surprise, Will, that you bring up the fact that, you know, he just never looked at himself as somebody that, you know, that deserved to be on the Ring of Honor for the Tennessee Titans, but he certainly well deserved to be.
Brad Hopkins with us this morning. We're talking Frank Wycheck, and Brad, you bring up a real point that I brought up in the 7, man. It was a little bit of I said, you know, football players deserve to grow old too, right? And, of course, what you mentioned, of course, the mental health, physical health, whether it be substance or just, you know, of the body, of the mind, right? I tell people all the time that transition out of the game can be a little bit different for everybody. Everybody's got a different walk and different circle, man. And I'm glad you brought some awareness to that, Brad. That's major props to you being a teammate of him, being able to speak on that too.
Ramon, you know exactly what I'm talking about when you talk about this weird fraternity that, that Frank and I both spent, and you spent so much time committing our lives to. There's no other profession that you can pour so much of your soul into, and the expiration date leaves you still at a very young age. We hang out together, we eat together, we study together, and sometimes we live together. Blaine was my roommate for a couple of years before he finally moved out on his own. But then that peer group dissolves, it disappears, because inevitably you've got to go on and do something else in life. And it's usually not with the person that you bled with, that you broke bread with, that you just camaraderized with. That's even the word. And you're left kind of figuring it out. Everybody's process is different. And the thing that we know the most, it just gets taken away from you. And nobody knows when that timetable is. So it just, it's a risk that we all take, and a risk that every single one of us that steps on the football field takes. And I think that to some degree we acknowledge it, but to be a really good player, you can't put that in your focus. Like, all these things can happen to me. Hell, it can even happen to kickers, right, Ryan Stonehouse? Mm-hmm. So we all inevitably face injury, and sometimes it takes you away from the game, but you just hope that you can continue to do what you do, because you're really not sure what's next. It's hard to even plan for the future when so much of your focus has to be preparing day to day, to get better. But no one tells you, hey, you know what? When this thing is over, you're guaranteed X, Y, and Z. You're not. No one's even guaranteeing you a job at my age. So this isn't a pity party for professional athletes, but it is, a unique industry that has its perils. And life quality is one of those. The things that are debilitative to us don't usually kick in until you're in your 40s and 50s. I got a new knee back in July last year after spending about 10 years, putting it off just because I didn't want to have it replaced again, And I remember trying to walk to an airport terminal and having to stop and just gather myself for a number of years, just part of it, and tossing and turning in a hotel bedroom. And my wife telling me, you know what, buddy, you're going to go see Dr. Burton Elrod because you're not keeping me up anymore. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what happens, So it's just one of those things, man. When you're playing in an industry like professional sports, especially football, when it's such a physical, violent nature, and injury is inevitable, and then trying to figure out what's next in life, you just hope that transition isn't as perilous as some of the stories that are always surrounding us.
No doubt, man. And I'll say this before I ask my next question to you. I'm always on the forefront of football technology, safety, helmets, shoulder pads, cleats, taking out the crackback block, although we've all loved what it was. But, Brad, it's understandable now seeing guys in this era deal with this type of stuff as to why this stuff has to change. And that crackback block that we all love, and he got jacked up. The game is still physical. It's never going anywhere and will never not be physical either. But I'm all for the GPSing, guys having days off. Like, I get it. It seems soft. But, Brad, I think you can speak to it. You understand that it's still not soft. Like, it takes a certain type of person to play this sport.
Yeah, I mean, we'll make fun of today's game, Ramon, and say that it's not like the game that we played, and there's not as many risks that are taken. And that's true. But you also still have to remember the premise of the game itself. The premise of the game is to break the guy's will across from you. And how do you do that? By hurting him, by making him physically feel something that he doesn't want to feel, breaking his will. And, to that degree, that's what the game is founded on. And people tune in to watch it and buy tickets to see that violence, But taking the unnecessary risks out of the game, I think that was definitely necessary. And acknowledging the repercussions of that physicality are something also that I think is smart and brought to the forefront. So that way players can play longer. You want to see these guys play as long as Bruce did and as long as I did. And, and that's a very rare situation because of the physical nature of the game itself. But the game is designed to say, hey, you know what, as players, if you smack that guy in the mouth just hard enough, he's not going to play against you as hard as he possibly can. And that goal sometimes is at the detriment of the people that we play with.
Brad Hopkins joining us now on Ramon, Kayla, and Will. Brad, take us inside that locker room as a teammate. And we get to kind of see as journalists and media members how these teammates interact, right, during that time where we're in their space. As a teammate, what was he like? And is there any story that kind of stands out to you?
He played in every stupid reindeer game that we played, Kayla. And when I say stupid reindeer games, you would never think that grown adults would roll up a ball of tape and almost play volleyball or dodgeball or, just the stupid stuff that we did to pass the time. He was one of us to do that. Linemen are particularly known, doing these kind of things. We would play movie games, Kayla, like we would try and guess a movie that a like actor was in, and if you didn't guess it, you were out. I mean, these are the things that we did. It was almost childlike, but it was almost necessary to keep your sanity. And Frank was one of those guys that did exactly what we did every single time. He was one of us. He was a lineman that wore tight end's number, and obviously we know that most tight ends are extensions of the offensive line anyway because they do just about as much blocking as they do catching. But his active and willing participation to be a goofball like one of us in the kangaroo court, those are the things that I'll always remember about Frank. Quick story about Frank. We were in the Astrodome. I think that we were on the goal line about to go in and score a touchdown. And Frank jumped off sides. And he just screamed, "I suck!" And I remember him getting the attention. Like, we all looked at him like, what the hell is wrong with you? Who are you, first off? Because we really didn't even acknowledge the fact that we got him, that we picked him up because it wasn't like he was there in training camp. It just came out of nowhere. But I remember just even looking across to the defense we were playing against, and they looked at us like, the hell's wrong with this dude? It was funny at that moment, but it kind of showed you, who he was, just really self-deprecating and knowing that he did something that, affected us. And it pissed him off that it did, but that was Frank, and it was a funny moment that we laughed about later on, but in that moment, it was just like absolutely crazy that he yelled at himself in such a dramatic fashion that we all had to pause and take notice of what this guy was doing. But we ended up scoring a touchdown anyway, just from 5 yards further than the way when we started.
That's great, Brad. Brad Hopkins joining us on RKW. We talked to David Boclair earlier, obviously covered you guys, had some really great stories about Frank. I asked Boclair, I said, was there a point where you thought, oh, this guy's going to transition into media? He brought up you and said, we knew that Brad was probably going to transition. We didn't quite know about Frank. Was there a moment, though, that you said, okay, Frank could be good for the media side?
Yeah, it took a minute when he and Mike were working the game, for me to acknowledge the fact that, hey, this guy's pretty good. Because him relating to the game as it unfolded was something that was natural to him because he played for so long and he was so successful at what he did, understanding the game from a different perspective. But I'm like you, Kayla. I didn't see him really necessarily transitioning into being a broadcaster. But once he started doing it, it made sense. He did it for so long that I thought that it just became second nature to him, like I just said. And it was fun listening to him. It was fun listening to his perspective. It was a different energy. Mike has always been the voice of the Titans and did everything to set the table. And, Frank was just the side pieces that you needed to have a great meal. And he did a tremendous job at it. And it's unfortunate that, he had to take a break to get himself right. And unfortunately, the game keeps moving. Things keep evolving, and he wasn't able to get back in line where he was. That's just unfortunate. But I didn't see it. But once he started doing it, I knew that this guy was talented enough. He was smart enough to get himself in a position to understand how this industry works and to try and take full advantage of that to make a new career. I was actually happy for him, Kayla, that he found something, because so many of us don't. And I'll be honest, I used his model. When I decided to retire, after they released me, and I went to a few teams to see if, in fact, there was any interest. I said, you know what? Frank's doing a great job on the radio. That's what I'm going to do. There's no sense in avoiding the inevitable. I might as well get going now rather than chase a few more dollars for a couple of years, even though I don't think physically I was able to do it anyway. But, yeah, he looked like he was having so much fun that, I think that we all just wanted to do it, but I was just happy that he found a new identity.
Brad Hopkins, former Titan, has been our guest this morning, remembering the late Frank Wycheck. Brad, excellent stuff as always. We really appreciate the time.
You guys take care.
Thanks, Brad.
Yes, sir. There's Brad Hopkins with us this morning here on RKW, remembering his former teammate and our former host right here on the Zone, and Frank Wycheck. Lots to reflect on that I want to get to coming up next on stories we've heard this morning. We will talk a little bit of Titans and Dolphins as well coming up in the fourth hour of the show. And we've got space the rest of the show for your calls at 615-737-1045. Things you've heard that resonate with you and Frank Wycheck's life and career as a Tennessee Titan, as well as your own favorite stories as well. We'll start with Coach T and everyone else on hold as well. We'll get to you coming up next right here on RKW.
Life is busy. We could all use some extra time in our day, which is exactly why Two Rivers Ford offers mobile service. We'll bring the service to your driveway at no additional charge. Oil changes, brakes, batteries, the certified technicians at Two Rivers will perform basic maintenance on your vehicle wherever you are, so you'll have more time for moments like this. Schedule your mobile service appointment by scanning the QR code or calling Two Rivers Ford today.
RKW is brewed by 8th and Roast right here at 104.5 The Zone. A great, great show this morning from lots of very special guests. We really appreciate David Boclair, Kevin Ingram, Brad Hopkins for stopping by to remember Zone host, Titans radio color analyst, and Tennessee Titan legend Frank Wycheck, who passed away over the weekend. Ramon Foster down in Miami, Kayla Anderson, Will Bowling with you. Let's go to the phones where Coach T is in Nashville. First up. What's up, Coach T?
Man, guys, first of all, good morning to you. Happy holidays. How everybody doing?
Thank you. We're good.
Good morning, Coach.
Ramon, be careful on the road tonight, man. Tighten up, baby.
No doubt.
Hey, listen, I couldn't have called in at a better hour with everybody. My guy Kevin, of course, my guy B Hop. What's up, B? The story I've got with Wycheck, me coming Coach T, wouldn't have been the situation as a home run here in Nashville with the people that know me without Frank. Funniest story ever. Mark being a New Yorker, and he knows that I'm a true Chicago guy. During the 2014-15 Preds season, Mark and I would talk back and forth, hockey and this and that, and Frank gets involved with it. So Frank and I are going back and forth on the radio about this and that, and he's a diehard PK Subban guy, and of course I'm a Chris Chelios guy. So we make this bet, and Frank says, "I tell you what, let's do this, Coach T." And he would almost have me like a red line into the show at that time, in between him and Blaine. And he said, if the Blackhawks beat the Preds, I'll fly you to Chicago to the parade and everything else. But if the Preds win and go all the way, I want dinner at a restaurant of my choice. And I knew that bill was going to be pretty expensive. Needless to say, my Blackhawks won that year, the last time they won the Stanley Cup. And, in 14-15, Frank and I became friends behind the scenes. It was incredible, the things he was going through, but he would come out and speak to my AAU program, would go golfing and do some things. And so, he kind of hit me hard when I found the news out. Just a completely incredible guy. He didn't hold that he was a Titan bigger than anyone else. When he came out and talked to the kids, he was like a kid himself. So he's definitely going to be missed, man. And I just appreciate the time and the opportunity that I had hanging out with him and the guys around the show and doing things. And he definitely made a better person than me myself. So I just want to let you guys know that this morning.
No doubt.
Coach T, that's great stuff.
Good stuff, Coach T.
Thank you so much for the call. One of the many great memories that I know listeners have of Frank, and that's certainly a good one.
It is. That's cool stuff being connected like that, man, and that's what it's all about. That's what we do here on this Airways also, man. I'm glad to hear these stories come out even more, Will and Kayla.
Let's go to the phones again where Trey is in Nashville. Up next this morning, 615-737-1045. Hey, Trey.
Good morning, guys. How y'all?
Great.
Good morning.
Well, I wish I was calling under better circumstances, but one of the memories I have that resonates besides Frank trucking guys with the football was 2 times I saw Poison at Starwood, and Brett Michaels, first thing he would announce after they'd sing the first song is he'd been partying backstage all night with Frank. And that's just the guy he was, man. He loved to have fun. And I'm going to miss it, dude, man. I'm going to break up, but thank y'all for taking my call.
Thank you, Trey. Appreciate the call.
That's hard.
Yeah.
I mean, people are emotional. You have every right to be this morning. Touched people in so many different ways, whether you met him or not. You can really feel it from the calls today and what we're seeing on, social media and the F&M Bake Chat. It's a sad day.
The full statement from his family over the weekend, word for word, we'll read it for you here. Family of Frank Wycheck saying, "It is with great sadness the family of Frank Wycheck has confirmed his death. Born Frank John Wycheck on October 14th, 1971. He passed away in his home on Saturday, December 9th, 2023 at the age of 52. Frank spent 11 seasons in the NFL, primarily with the Tennessee Titans. At this time, it appears Wycheck fell inside his Chattanooga, Tennessee home and hit his head on Saturday morning. He was found unresponsive that afternoon. Wycheck moved to Chattanooga, Tennessee this past summer to be closer to his family. He leaves behind 2 adult daughters, Deanna and Madison, both married, and 3 grandchildren, Leo, Stevie, and August. The family, per his wishes, plans to work with experts for ongoing brain injury, TBI, and CTE research. Funeral services have not been made at this time. The Wycheck family appreciates the love and support they've received, but asks the public to please respect their privacy during this difficult time. We continue to take your favorite stories of Frank Wycheck, your memories of the legendary Titans tight end and 104.5 The Zone host at 615-737-1045. We'll also talk a little Titans and Dolphins coming up in hour number 4. And we'll start by telling you who is available, who is unavailable tonight in Miami as the Titans play on Monday Night Football. We'll talk some Titans, and we'll take a look at the players and the biggest storylines that are most important going into tonight's matchup against Miami, what we're watching for on Monday Night Football. That's next as Hour 4 begins after this on RKW.
Hey, it's Kayla Anderson, joined now by our good friend and certified arborist, Dean Glasscock, of what is now a Save a Tree company, doing such good work and really critical work during these types of the seasonal months with winter coming. What can you tell us, Dean, about why it's so crucial to, pay attention to your trees and shrubs right now, especially with winter pruning that y'all offer?
Yeah, hey, happy somber Monday, everybody. First of all, we'll talk real quick about trees. It's wintertime. It's a great time to prune. We're certified arborists. We're not just cutters. We're going to come out there and we're going to be able to diagnose what your tree needs. We're going to do it right, be transparent with you like we always have been for the last almost 30 years now. So don't forget, it's 615-299-9999, saveatree.com. And I'm just kind of taken back today because today's very somber for me because of Frankie passing away. He was the first guy at the Zone that I was introduced to that helped us get started. And we've met with so many Zone listeners for so long and served them. And I don't know, it's just a sad day for me. I just had to mention my heart goes out to the Wycheck family. And that's all I'm going to say about it. But I'm just sad. And I hope you all have a great week. And if we can help you with your trees, 615-299-9999, saveatree.com. Have a great day.
Thank you, Dean. You're just as much a part of the family as everybody else was, and thank you for sharing your story. Again, it's Save a Tree. They are the professionals, 29 years of experience, 615-299-9999, or log on to saveatree.com.
What's going on? Just about 9 o'clock from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I'm Robert Walsh. Sunday Night Football last night, Dallas smothered the Eagles 33-13. Dak Prescott was deadly, finishing with 271 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. The Cowboys are now in a 3-way record-wise tie for the lead in the NFC, but the 49ers hold the tiebreaker over both the Eagles and the Cowboys, holding on to that number 1 spot in the NFC. Bills got to enact a little revenge on the Chiefs yesterday, 20-17. After the game, Patrick Mahomes had a few choice words about the officiating after a potential game-winning Kadarius Toney touchdown was called back due to him being offsides. The Chiefs' loss drops them to the 3rd spot in the AFC and potentially must play the first road playoff game of Patrick Mahomes' career. And Titans tonight taking on the Dolphins in Miami. Lee Company countdown to kickoff starts with 3HL at 4 o'clock. Then Titans Radio will take over at 5, taking you all the way up to the 7:15 kickoff. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and the Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Off we go into hour number 4 on a Monday morning edition of RKW. We are brewed by 8th and Roast with Ramon Foster joining us from right outside Miami, Florida this morning. Kayla Anderson, Robert Walsh, and Reed Smith behind the glass. My name is Will Bowling. Taking your calls and your reflections on the life and legacy of former Titan Frank Wycheck, who tragically passed away over the weekend. We can do that for the rest of the show with you on the phone lines at 615-737-1045. Streaming live on 104.5 The Zone TV, where you could watch the show, including Ramon Foster, who is plugged in on video as well from sunny Florida. Is it sunny down there?
It is sunny down here.
Nice.
It's a little bit of an overcast. It's actually going to be a little bit cooler today, as a matter of fact, man.
You like that.
Man, it's 67 degrees right now, which is winter in Florida, Miami, I guess. So I'll
There
take
you go.
it.
I think their coldest game on record was last year on Christmas. And wasn't it in the 40s?
In the 40s.
Ooh.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Must be nice.
Imagine that. In the 40s, man. But it's nice down here. I see why people snowbird and navigate down here, though. It is beautiful this time of the year.
Just when you thought Buck Rising couldn't be any more insufferable, I don't know if you guys have seen his Twitter this morning. He said his pre-show prep, and it's him on the beach with waves crashing at his hairy little toes. I don't know if we should allow him to do a show today. I think he's gloating in all of our faces. He knows it's cold here. Ramon could have done that. Ramon could have taken selfies on the beach. Ramon could have had a 12-calendar shoot out there, but he didn't. He saved that for everybody back here. So I think we should all hold it against Buck today for flaunting the Miami beaches in our face.
I will lock this room that we're using as a studio. I'll do something bad if you need me to, Bert. Like I'm into that. Lucas can handle it. I'll even hang around a little bit more if you need me to call in.
I appreciate that.
There we go.
Just putting pictures of his feet on the internet for free.
What are we doing, man?
Come on, man.
Stop it, Will, right now.
It's ridiculous.
You said for free.
I did not see it either on Twitter because
People who love feet will love it.
on game days I mute Buck because of the annoying video that he puts out before every game of the guy screaming, saying it's game day. I just go ahead and mute him preemptively when the Titans are about to play. So
Didn't you mute him
I'll
for
see
a
his
while?
tweets tomorrow.
Buck knows that if he was going to show pictures of his feet, that I would be his only fan. So he holds off on that for everyone else's sake.
Oh my!
Outstanding.
Happy Monday, good people.
Yeah, right.
His only fan. 615-737-1045, our number. We'll talk a little bit of Titans and Dolphins coming up in a few minutes, and continue to remember Frank Wycheck this morning. Titans owner Amy Adams Strunk saying over the weekend, Frank's name was synonymous with Titans football. He was such a huge part of our team's success, both on and off the field. He embraced this community and fan base immediately. and everyone loved him right back. Really good stuff from Amy Adams Trunk on the passing of Frank Wycheck over the weekend. Let's go back to the phones where Ken is in Franklin. Up next with us, 615-737-1045. What's up, Ken?
Hey, how's it going, everybody? I was really sorry to be calling on such a sad day, man. Frank was such a great man. Anyway, I just wanted to tell you a story. I used to be a makeup artist at Performance Studios when they were down on Church Street, across from the NES building. Most people know about that place. They would go there for Halloween for all their supplies and whatnot. But anyway, we would do makeup on people, and Frank would have this big Halloween party every year. Come in and ask for me, and I would do his makeup, and we did him, we did him as the Cold Miser. Remember the Heat and Cold Miser Christmas special? Oh, he was hilarious in that costume, full makeup. Then once he was Captain Stubbing, the captain of the Love Boat.
Oh, my goodness.
That was hilarious. I had to put a bald cap on him, and he had his captain's uniform on, and he was walking around proud in that. But my favorite was when he came in and loomed over me and said, "I want to be Frankenstein." And I'm like, wait a minute, you already are Frankenstein. But with a full Hollywood makeup, the flat head and the green and the electrodes coming out of his neck. He had the full costume, and he had the boots that raised him up about 4 inches. So I think he was around 6'4" anyway, but made him like 6'8". When he came out of my makeup room and walked through the store to exit the building, everyone parted, and he was just looking around with this huge smile on his face. And everyone was like, "Oh, my God, look at that." Anyway, we had such fun. He was a great subject in the chair. He was a little bit antsy and sometimes a little bit annoyed, but by the end, he was just grinning, and he just loved it. Anyway, he was a great guy, and we talked a little bit of football while he was in the chair, but for the most part, he was just quiet and let me do my thing. But he was a great guy, and I'm going to miss him.
Thank you, Ken. That's awesome.
That's great.
Really appreciate the call. We've seen a couple of those pictures already this weekend. Our friend, one of our coworkers in sales, Becky from downstairs, Becky Holt, posted a picture of him as Frankenstein. So we have seen that picture, and we know that Frank loved Halloween as much as anybody in the world. And then we saw a picture from our friend Lisa Manning down the hall with 95.5, our sister station, who showed us a picture of him as Gene Simmons from Kiss.
It was awesome.
Totally dressed up with the full makeup and everything. Just incredible to hear about Frank and his love for Halloween. That is certainly one thing
pretty cool
that people know about him for sure. We go back to the phones. Ryan is in Gallatin up next, 615-737-1045. Hey, Ryan.
Hey, guys. Good morning.
Morning.
My heart goes out to the Wycheck family first and foremost, and then all the victims of the tornadoes here in Middle Tennessee on Saturday night. As I sit here in my backyard, I'm looking at just a lot of damage. Roofs off, and power lines still down, and power still out here in Gallatin. But I had one of those Tennessee Titans signs, by my mailbox, and man, that was the only thing that stayed. It's wild. You see roofs ripped off and all this stuff down the street, and Tennessee tough, man. That sign's still sitting there. So, hey, guys, let's go out tonight, man. Give it your all for the Tennesseans, for Nashville, man. There's a lot of people hurt, and tighten up, man. Do it for Tennessee.
No doubt.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate the call.
And prayers out to you and your neighborhood, and I know with the cleanup that it's emotionally draining, right? So just everybody, our thoughts and prayers are also with you guys who have been hit by those horrible tornadoes. And thank you to those who made us aware of that, gave us the updates, and kept us safe.
The latest numbers in the Tennessean this morning, an estimated 13 tornadoes late Saturday, according to the National Weather Service. Just unbelievable. The devastation in our home and our area. Officials said 6 people died Saturday night in Clarksville and Madison. 83 people were reportedly transported to area hospitals, 62 from Clarksville and 21 in the Nashville area. 9 of those hospitalized or transferred to Vanderbilt University Medical Center and were in critical, unstable condition. on Sunday. Just awful what we're having to watch our community go through again. And again, just a nightmare weekend here in Middle Tennessee and in Nashville. And Ramon, I know you guys up there in Hendersonville, very close to the tornado going through that area.
We were, man. Our house is probably about 2 miles away from where, touchdown and landed. I remember watching news to Kayla's point, talking about, the news and just social media and all the accounts that kept us updated. If it wasn't for that, man, and truthfully, I think we all live in a world sometimes where you're just like, it'll be in a random field somewhere. No, it hit directly in our front and backyards and on top of us this last weekend, man. So Hendersonville has a ways to go for sure. I go up and down Main Street often. My barbershop's over there. We frequent the businesses over there often. The Pony Express place is just gone. The party store is gone. The bowling alley, it's so many different places. But it's not just Hendersonville. It's Clarksville, as you just said, Will, and Springfield, Tennessee also got wrecked this weekend. So we say Tennessee tough often in accordance to the football team, but specifically it's people, man. It's going to need a whole lot of tough people surrounding them. And I know we'll be doing our part in Hendersonville and just everybody making sure it's for the right purposes and going towards the right causes too. So reach out, call somebody if you hadn't talked to them, man, just to check in on them because you never know. That area in which it just hit was vast and wide. I read something where the one in Hendersonville was 4 football fields wide. Imagine that. So looking forward to watching us get back on our feet as far as the county of Sumner goes and Robertson and Montgomery also.
615-737-1045. Let's go quickly to Frying Pan. Talk about Frank Wycheck, remembering him this morning. What's up, Frying Pan?
Hey, appreciate you taking my call. Real quickly, I want to say, Springfield's my hometown, and I talked to a buddy of mine, was very fortunate not to be hit by the tornado. He lives over in the Legacy, and he said he literally looked out his back window and saw it out on the golf course. So the Lord was looking after him, and we're very fortunate in Springfield not to have more damage than what we got. And, just really praying for those folks in Clarksville and Madison that lost their lives. And, we've really been hit hard by tornadoes here the last 3 or 4 years. But anyhow, I want to transition to Frank Wycheck. He was the first Titans jersey that my dad bought for me when the Titans came to Nashville. And even though I'm a lifelong Bengals fan, I obviously adopted the Titans when they came to town as the Tennessee Oilers in '98. And many people want to talk about Frank Wycheck being a part of the Music City Miracle, but one of his best performances was against Ramon's Steelers, which, Ramon, you're still at Tennessee. But in 2003 playoff game, Frank Wycheck had 10 catches, over 100 yards, and a touchdown. It was a big touchdown, too. So Frank was just one of those guys, as many have said, he was really a pretty good athlete because if you go watch the highlights, he actually threw a touchdown pass to Kevin Dyson. And, man, I just hated to hear the news yesterday about old Frank because he was a favorite of mine. And also when the zone started, I was in college at Austin Peay, and I would listen to the Wake Up Zone every morning. And obviously I've been calling in since 2003, 2004 when the zone started. So just want to share those thoughts with you. I appreciate taking the call, and have a good day, guys.
Thank you, Frank Pan.
Thanks, Frank Pan.
Appreciate the call. Yeah, 34-31. That was the legendary Joe Nedney kind of crazy field goal, all the things that were going on in overtime in that one against the Steelers in 2003. Our friend Rocky Boyman had a pick 6 in that game.
Oh, wow.
By the way. Yeah.
Did not know that.
Crazy. But, that was one that you look back at 34-31. The Titans only had 33 rushing yards from Eddie George that day on 15 carries, and Frank Wycheck was the dude of that game. 10 catches for 123 and a touchdown in a 34-31 win for the Tennessee Titans against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Crazy. So 615-737-1045. Great remembering all of your Frank Wycheck stories. We could take more of your phone calls on that as we continue. We'll talk a little bit of Titans and Dolphins as well. Who are you most interested to watch tonight as the Titans take on Miami? Who needs to step up in the biggest way without a couple of stars who are unavailable tonight for Tennessee? We'll dive into some Monday Night Football coming up next.
When it comes to large home repairs, a lot of the time we homeowners pretend we don't see the warning signs. We are afraid of what we're going to hear. This is especially true with waterproofing and foundation repair. It could be something big that needs to be fixed right away, or it may be a small problem now that'll become bigger later, or it may be nothing at all. Bottom line, we don't know. We certainly don't want to be sold something we don't need. We need a peace of mind, and United Structural Systems is the company to give you that. They have over 25,000 100% satisfied residential customers, and here's how they make that happen. When USS comes out to your house, you're going to get a problem solver who provides a peace of mind to their customers. That's the homeowners. You're not going to get someone who's worried about meeting a sales quote, upselling the next big thing, but somewhere there to help educate you and help you understand what's going on with your house. At USS, their only measure of success is how satisfied the homeowner is and not a closing ratio. Homeowners trust USS, keeping homes dry and stable for over 25 years. USS, serving Middle Tennessee, Southern Kentucky, Western Kentucky, and Northern Alabama. You can reach them online at USSTN.com or call them 615-488-7855.
RKW is brewed by 8th and Roast right here on 104.5 The Zone. Titans and Dolphins coming up tonight on Monday Night Football and right here on Titans Radio. Spent the morning remembering Frank Wycheck, who passed away over the weekend. We could take more of your phone calls on your favorite Frank memories at 615-737-1045. Before we get back to the phones, guys, out tonight officially, Christian Fulton, Jeffrey Simmons, and Josh Wiley. The three who are confirmed out. And without Fulton, a big challenge becomes a little bit bigger against one of the most dynamic offenses in the NFL, to say the least, tonight in Miami.
Yeah, it does. Gets a little sticky tonight. Will be fascinating to see who's on Tyreek, how they try to take away one of their best options, because they got plenty of them. And then defensively for this team, also watching exactly what happens up front for the Titans. Big Jeff is out for this game. But what happens with Will Levis and the Jalen Ramsey experiment tonight? Will he try to attack him? I'll be watching that tonight for sure to see, strategically, you don't want to protect a young quarterback as much and tell him, hey, don't do this. You shouldn't do that. Sometimes you just got to kind of let him play ball, and I'm hoping we'll at least see a little bit of that moxie out of Will Levis tonight. The running game, figuring out what Jalen Duncan and Peter Skoronski is going to look back like. There's a lot of questions that I'd love to get answered when it comes down to you playing one of the better teams in the NFL. So big challenge tonight, and it's on prime time. So, of course, guys get a little bit more juiced up. Tyreek is closer to 2,000 yards receiving. What would that look like tonight for the Titans? Be awesome, man, if they can hold him under 100 yards. You want to talk about a defensive victory. Just doing that on its own is a huge victory for what he's done to every team this year.
Yeah, it's a Monday Night Football game, a first for a lot of these players, right? Especially these rookies that are seeing a lot of playing time. And you mentioned just the challenge that the secondary will have, and clearly you got a guy, like Trey Avery, who will be coming in with Christian Fulton being out. SMB, Sean Murphy-Bunting, is going to have a really good game. And there's really no margin for error. That's what it is with a team like this in Miami that continues to just put up those points and has so many weapons. And let's not forget, guys, about the special teams, because you've got a new punter out there. You've got a new special teams coordinator out there for the first time since obviously Ryan Stonehouse got hurt and they parted ways with Craig Ackerman. So got to keep that clean too. And it's going to be fun no matter what. I love watching Monday Night Football, especially when the Titans can represent on there. I know they're in a tough position right now with just, not having a great season. But I will say this. I know Mike Vrabel teams compete, and I know that they're going to do their best to make it somewhat competitive.
Let's go back to the phones as we remember Frank Wycheck this morning. Let's go to Big Orange up next, 615-737-1045. What's up, Big Orange?
Good morning. Two quick stories. BFL, Ramon, go Vols.
Go Vols.
Started out in the car business. I was in the car business for 30 years. And met Frank one day. He came in. This is right when 104 was getting ready to get started. Him and Mark Howard. And I took care of him for about 2 years. And not just a football player, he was a fine young gentleman. I'm 62 years old now. But you're talking about a man that had a heart. It wasn't, I'm stuck up. I'm Frank Wycheck. I mean, this guy had a true heart and cared. So I got a shirt signed and stuff anyway. I got my son his first jersey. Well, after the Super Bowl, we knew some friends and stuff and some trainers and different people. And after the Super Bowl, we all got together and watched it. But the next day, I was at the dealership, and one of the guys came in and he said, I got something for you. A couple of days later, right after Super Bowl, he said, I got something for you. I said, what you got? He said, hold out your hand. Well, he handed me Frank Wycheck's wristbands. Now, you're talking about a son that's 32 years old now that went crazy. He's got Frank Wycheck's wristbands from the Super Bowl.
Wow.
Nice.
And I tell you what, we lost a good one. Fine young man, not just a football player, but a fine gentleman. And Godspeed, and thank you for taking my call.
Thank you, Big Orange. Good stuff.
Big time.
That's quite the piece of memorabilia,
Right.
to say the least.
It's always fascinating, too, in these types of moments. People use the old cliche, people won't remember what you do, but they'll always remember how you make them feel. I think we're recognizing that on a day like today because everything we've heard about Frank Wycheck, other than, his teammates or reporters coming on speaking about him, is about how Frank made them feel. That's been the biggest point that's been made today, and that's why you always try to tell people, just be good. Be a good human being. And it seemed like there was one thing that Frank did. He was a good human being to a lot of folks. And I love hearing these stories and these type of moments. And I'm sure his daughters and grandchildren and close friends will enjoy hearing that, his name been spoken about in this manner for times to come, Love it.
Let's go back to the phones. Caples is in Springfield up next. What's up, Mr. Caples?
What's good with y'all, man?
What's going on, Cape?
What's up, Cape?
Ramon, happy you made it down to Miami safely, brother.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Been listening to 104.5 a long time, man, and one of my memories is always listening to Frank and Mark, how we go back and forth with each other. And I tweeted on Twitter yesterday, I bet you they had a walk-off in heaven today, and hopefully Mark didn't break his angel wings trying to beat Frank in walking. But just thinking about him as a football player and what he meant to Steve McNair, because I don't know if people remember in the early years, Frank was leading the team in receptions and yards because he was Steve's, security blanket before he matured into the passer that he was. It was Frank catching all the passes, and you kind of wish Will Levis had a security blanket like that now. But, I used to tease Frank when I seen him because he had to be like the slowest tight end I ever seen. And it's just like, how did he get open as slow as he was to me? He was always open. And I was like, what was your 40 time? And he was like, that's classified. But it was just funny, man. That man was always open. As slow as he ran, any Titans fan that was, been there since the beginning knew that guy was slow as I don't know what. So for him to get open all the time was mesmerizing to me. He was just a great football player and a good person, and we're going to miss him, and shout out to his family and everything else. So just rest in peace, Frank. And the Titans need to retire 89. That's all I got. Love y'all.
Thank you, Caples.
Thanks, Cape.
It is incredible, just the loyalty of so many of you who have listened to this show in the morning before it was us, obviously. And I'll raise my hand and say I was part of that too. And Kevin Ingram was on the show earlier this morning and talked about how it's incredible how he'll hear people in their 20s come to him and say, yeah, I grew up listening to you guys, and I grew up partly wanting to go into broadcasting because of you guys. And again, a big influence into why I do what I do now is because 104.5 The Zone was such a part of my commute. It was a part of my family. It was a part of, everything that we had here in Nashville. And I talk about it a lot too from the Tennessee perspective. And there is a generation of broadcasters from this area of the state and this area of the country who are broadcasters because of who John Ward was and who he was and what he meant as the voice of the Vols. And we are so spoiled in this area to have been, alive with such great broadcasters and people who care so much about this community. And Frank Wycheck cared so much about Nashville. And for a guy from Philadelphia, right outside Pennsylvania, who played at Maryland, he embraced Nashville and embraced this city so well. And being a part of that daily commute for so many of us, certainly part of what spoils all of us, and creating the brand of what 104.5 The Zone is today. We would not be here doing what we are with the audience that we have without people like Frank Wycheck, and for that we are eternally grateful, certainly for the influence he had on our audience and on our brand here. 615-737-1045 is our number. Let's go to Paul in Franklin up next with us this morning. Hey, Paul.
Hey, Paul.
Hey, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Morning.
Hey, it sure is a sad day in Tennessee, but I'd like to say this about Frank. I don't have a personal story about him, but Lord, y'all know I'm a true blue Titan at heart, and I watched him forever, and he's part of the great pantheon of Titans back in that era, and he may be gone, but he will not be forgotten. We will not forget Frank Wycheck. and I want that to be emphasis. He will always be with us. And getting into the tragedy of the tornadoes, thoughts and prayers with those people. Lord have mercy. It's such a sad, sad thing that happened. I'd also like to say I got a first cousin, Big Ragu, that worked for Nashville Electric Service for 40 years. His name's Stoney Johnson, and they're out there working. And please remember them folks that's out there that's working to restore the power. Stoney told me they're working round the clock to do it. So the people in Gallatin, Hendersonville that ain't got power, I promise you they're out there working. And that's my comment. And, hey, thank y'all, and God bless you, okay?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
And great point. Great point.
Yes, for sure. Those linesmen work for NES and Cumberland Electric, and they bring in folks from out of town, too, to help give us power and stuff back, man. That is a phenomenal feat. That's a very prideful job, and those guys take that job very serious, too, man. Can't be understated. I'm glad you brought that up right there, Paul.
And to say the least, too, I know it goes without saying, but if you want to help, if you want to get involved, first make sure that you are allowing emergency personnel to do what they do. And certainly not the time to go up there and just drive around and take pictures just to see what it all looks like. That there will be plenty of opportunities to help. Please stay out of the way of those who are working to try to get power back and lines back up and debris cleared. I always feel the need to say that, even though certainly I know it is understood. Let's go to Brandon in Lebanon up next, 615-737-1045. Hey, Brandon.
Hey, how are you guys this morning?
Great.
Good.
Hey, Ramon, stay safe out there, man.
Will do, man. Same with you guys.
All right. I've got a really funny story, and it's really crazy because of, the passing of Frank. But it was my wedding night, and me and my wife, we had a private ceremony at the time. And we were like, let's just do something different because we already had plans, to have our honeymoon and everything. But we were just like, we don't have no kids. We don't have nothing to worry about. Let's go watch a movie. So we decided to go watch The Hangover. And it was playing over there in Harding Place at the new theater that was over there. So we decided to go watch this movie. And I'm the obnoxious, loud laugher. If everybody that knows me is just like, this guy is so annoying because of his laugh. Well, everybody that has seen the movie, spoiler alert, it's hilarious and it will make you laugh and almost pee on yourself. So I'm sitting there laughing hysterically so loud, and this couple in front of me kept turning around and looking at me, and they're laughing and laughing and laughing. By the time that we got out of the theater, I realized who was in front of me. It was Frank and his wife, and Mark Howard was with them. And they were sitting there in front of me the whole time watching the movie. And we're getting ready to walk to our car, and Frank stops me. He said, hey, your laugh is so annoying, but you had me laughing harder after you laughing made me laugh at the movie harder because of your laugh. He said, I appreciate you so much. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to disturb. He said, no. It was perfect. And him and Mark took a picture with me and my wife on our wedding day, and I will never forget that, ever.
That's awesome.
That's a great story.
Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate the call.
That's incredible.
Very cool.
Very honest, as Frank Wycheck was, but, he liked people who were also just themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
That's great. Let's go to Murphy in the borough up next, 615-737-1045. Hey, Murphy.
Good morning, all.
Morning.
It's a hard morning.
Mm-hmm.
I was at I had some memorabilia in my trunk of my car. Oh, it's probably 10 years ago, y'all, and somewhere in Franklin, and I pulled in a bagel place, I think on Mallory Lane, and he came walking out, and I couldn't believe it. I said, Frank, I opened my trunk, and there was this collage there, and he ended up signing it. It had plastic over top of it, and I still have it up in my hallway. And he said, yeah, I'll sign that thing. And I shook his hand, and I'm telling you guys, I'm 6'2", 230, and I got big hands. And you know what? I didn't have big hands. He shook my hand. Let me tell you what. You talk about a mitt. It was like, if you ever shake hands with a catcher's mitt, I'm telling you, he was about the nicest guy. Even before this, I think there should be something, I don't know, a statue or something outside of that stadium, but maybe Frank reaching for that ball when Neil handed him that ball to throw that lateral or something. I always thought there should be something even before all this happened, but I'll tell you what, that dude had some humongous hands, and that's my thought today. Love you, Frank.
Thank you, Murphy.
That's awesome.
Appreciate the call. And that is the trend, right? Frank made time to speak to any fan or autograph anything a fan wanted. Certainly the trend, and we really appreciate all of you who have joined us to share your perspective and your Frank moment through the years as well, guys. And as we kind of transitioned a little bit of Titans and Dolphins conversation here to close out the show in a few minutes, just kind of as we wrap up this part of the show and this conversation with so many fans, it's just been heartwarming to hear the impact that Frank had on this community.
Absolutely. I'm glad we had the time to do that this morning because so many of you called in, so many of you have written in, sharing your stories. And I think that means a lot. And it just goes to show, even if you didn't know Frank or you didn't cover him here, at least you knew the impact he had on this community and that team and their fans.
615-737-1045. We'll get to as many calls as we can to close out the show and go rapid fire on the other side. We'll quickly also give the one player we are watching most closely tonight in Miami as the Titans take on the Dolphins, and wrap up the show after this. Wrapping up the show on a Monday morning edition of RKW, brewed by 8th and Roast. The Bunk Rising Show is next. They talk Titans and Dolphins, talk with Rhett Bryant as well. Coming up in the 11 a.m. hour, you'll want to stick around for that. And stick around all day as we continue to give tribute to former Titan Frank Wycheck, who passed away over the weekend, and get you ready for Monday Night Football in Miami tonight. Quickly, before we get back to a couple more calls on the way out, guys, the player you are most interested in watching tonight in Miami is whom? Kayla, we'll start with you on this one.
I'm actually going to go with, surprising enough, someone on offense. I'm interested to just see Will Levis on Monday Night Football, prime time, right?
Yep.
And 7th start for him. How does he kind of deal with these situations that he might get in tonight with a team that can put up points? How do you respond? How do you put up points tonight? So I think that's who I'm keying in on, guys.
For me, it is Aaron Brewer. For the specifics of Christian Wilkerson, watching him do work, again, knowing his style of play, is I always try to find a weak point when it comes down to how he goes about making his plays and whatnot. I'm interested in seeing how Brew handled this on Monday Night Football with the big cameras on you. Only game, well, no, it's 2 games on, but one of the main shows on Monday night, watching how he handles that more than anything, because when it boils down to how this offense needs to operate, it's really got to play keep away from this Miami offense. That's going to be their best mode of operating this tonight, is to play keep away from them, but they plan on winning this game. I got Brewer tonight.
I'm going to say 2 guys. Levis was my primary answer, just simply because this is not his first primetime start now. What lessons did he learn in Pittsburgh, starting there in primetime and coming off of a game where he said, that was my worst start as a Titan? What do you now improve upon after saying that? And something I still disagree with. I don't think it was his worst start as a Titan last week. But, okay, well, then what do you do differently this time around? My other answer is Tajay Spears, because of Derrick Henry's injury last week against Indianapolis, Tajay was thrown in as running back 1. Did he earn more looks as a first and second down back because of what he did in that game? And guys, he was able to make miss just as the single back and not just as a third down running back in the shotgun. But I'm interested to see if the Titans want to transition more to using him as just the guy after what he was able to do last week. So interested to see how that works out tonight. Let's go back to the phones where Bud is in Brentwood up next, talking about Frank Wycheck this morning. What's up, Bud?
Hey, guys, great show.
Thank you.
So I have a nephew who subsequently passed away in 2019, but he had never been to an NFL game, and I took him to a game, and there used to be a watering hole across from the stadium, and went over there to grab a meal, and Frank was in there, and I gave Frank a shout-out, and he came over and gave us a big hug, and my nephew was a computer geek and a nerd, and he took a selfie with us when selfies weren't a thing, believe it or not. And Frank was just awesome. He was so kind, and he reached out to my nephew. So cut to the game. It's against the Giants, and we were down 21-0 at the half. And my nephew left the game, caught an Uber before there were Ubers, and we wound up coming back in the fourth quarter. I don't know if you guys remember, Pac-Man went wild in the fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm.
Went to overtime, beat the Giants 24-21.
Yep.
But what a memory. And Frank was just so awesome, and so I'm thinking of both Frank and my nephew today. Rest in peace. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Bud.
Thank you.
Appreciate the call. 2006 Giants-Titans. That was a legendary one, to say the least. No doubt about it. Good stuff.
That is. What a great memory right there, too.
Absolutely.
Bringing it full circle. That's awesome.
Quickly recapping the NFL weekend, guys, there was just a ton to get into, and we'll do that throughout the week. Of course, tomorrow will be our customary Titans reaction day, as we'll take a lot of your calls and react to tonight's Monday Night Football game. But what stuck out to you guys, the one game that interested you most yesterday?
Well, first of all, I'll say what a crazy weekend. Like, I felt like NFL, like on a lot of weekends, was wasted because these games were not predictable, not even close. But I'll go with the game last night. I just thought the way that ended, the emotion that you're starting to see from Patrick Mahomes because my goodness, they might have to go on the road to do a playoff game. At this point, I think it's going to be interesting to see how teams that we've seen here recently have success and win Super Bowls, how do they manage maybe not a great season or the season that people expect them to have. You kind of saw it with Patrick Mahomes last night at the end of that game. Frustration with the refs, obviously with the Kadarius Toney offsides call. So I think it's interesting to see how these teams, Buffalo Bills, Kansas City, move forward when they're maybe not having the success that they've seen in the past.
And Ramon, have you had an offsides call ever on the offense at a game you played in?
Not like that, and then especially not as far as like the pre-snap offsides like that right there. They're usually tell them to get back, and those moments right there, that was kind of weird to me, man.
I had never seen it on the offense, and then it happened twice in one day because it happened on Sunday Night Football between the Cowboys and the Eagles on a tush push third down also.
Mm-hmm.
It did. And did you hear the stat line in the game, too? They had their expert ref analyst on set with them, and they said that was a call that was emphasized this year. They didn't do it as much last year. It was 2 calls like that last year. This year alone has been 11 calls, so teams have been put on notice about that.
Super interesting. Ramon, what stuck out to you over the weekend?
Cowboys, Eagles.
Yeah.
Eagles being stagnant offensively is very telling. And also just the Cowboys. I hate to brag on them, but they're good. The defense, solid. They played more physical than Philly, and I didn't think that was going to be the case. And Dak, if he's not the MVP, I don't know who is. He's playing lights out, man. They hit you with the run game and the passing game, and they are playing with so much confidence right now. Goodness.
Good for Dak.
For me, no one in the AFC South is really that good. They're not. Jets 30, Texans 6, Bengals 34, Colts 14. The Jags as well, 31-27, losing to a Cleveland Browns team quarterbacked by Joe Flacco. No one in the AFC South is really great at football.
That's very true. And the injuries are mounting up right now, seems like, for Houston, too.
Yep.
And, of course, Jacksonville looked bad yesterday against the
really
Browns,
bad.
man. Just overall, bad ball. You're right, Will. It was bad ball yesterday. Colts took a L too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, everyone in the AFC South lost. And if the Titans lose tonight, then AFC South would have gone 0-4. And with a Giants win tonight and a Titans loss, the Titans would have a top 5 pick.
Oh, my goodness.
In the 2024 NFL Draft. They are currently 6th as we start our Monday mornings. But that is our show, and the Buck Rising Show takes over coming up next. Much more tributes still to be given to Tennessee Titans legend Frank Wycheck. Brett Bryan will do that coming up at 11:20 on the Buck Rising Show. You'll certainly want to stick around for that. And the rest of our coverage throughout the day as we get you ready for Monday Night Football. Special thanks again to David Boclair, Kevin Ingram, Brad Hopkins, and to all of you who joined us to share your favorite Frank Wycheck memories. It has been a touching morning reflecting on his life and career as a Titan and as a host here on 104.5 The Zone. We're out of time. The Buck Rising Show is next, and Ramon Foster gives you words of wisdom on a Monday.
You must remember, good people, at all times, stay up for the game, but also your Twitter fingers and your mic is always hot.